Chapter 28:35. One arrow Xia Qin fan shouted, Zhan Chengxian, you're too shameless. My father has never mistreated you. Yet you sneak attacked him and imprisoned him here for hundreds of years. Now you want to kill us? Has your conscience been eaten by a dog? Zhan Chengxian snorted coldly. I've always been grateful to Master. I'm so outstanding and more talented than you. Master should have passed the sect master's position to me, but he actually chose a slut like you. I refuse to accept this. If Master had passed the sect master's position to me, I would have naturally treated him well and respected him. Unfortunately, he betrayed me, so don't blame me for being heartless. Zhuowen shook his head inwardly. He knew that Zhan Qingshuan's mentality was somewhat twisted. Xia Yizhu was the sect master. He had the final say in who he passed the sect master's position to. Not passing it to Zhan Chengxian was a betrayal in his eyes. Zhuowen really didn't know what to say. Zhan Chengxian, before entering the sword gauntlet, I gave you a chance. If you hadn't activated the killing formation, I would have let you live. Unfortunately, you chose the wrong path. Zhuowen shook his head, but that only caused Zhan Chengxian to mock him. He laughed loudly and said, Immortal Master Zhuo, I don't deny that your alchemy skills are very high, but you're just a mere primordial chaos lord. In my eyes, you're just an ant, a piece of trash. Yet you still let me live? Rumble. As soon as Zhan Chengxian finished speaking, the entire sword gauntlet trembled violently. Shortly after, Zhuowen discovered that the surrounding space had suddenly exploded with sharp sword qi. These sword qi contained peerless killing intent. Like a meat grinder, they wanted to envelop Zhuowen and the others and grind them into pieces. Xia Qin Fan, Xia Yizhu, and the Grand Elder's expressions changed greatly. The killing formation's power was too terrifying. It gave them a feeling that they couldn't resist. It's an eternal killing formation. It looks like we're going to die here. Xia Yizhu smiled bitterly. The Grand Elder and Xia Qin Fan also fell silent. Xia Qin Fan was only a Heaven's Mandate Lord, so she wouldn't be of much use. Xia Yizhu, on the other hand, was too heavily injured and didn't even have a tenth of his strength left. Although the Grand Elder was an eternal overlord, he was only an early-stage eternal overlord. In the face of an eternal overlord formation, he could barely hold on. Moreover, he had to protect Xia Qin Fan and Xia Yizhu, so the situation was even worse. Zhuowen calmly stood where he was. He took out an ordinary-looking dagger, and then he took out an arrow from the great world with his right hand. This arrow wasn't a Ho-E-Divine arrow. Instead, it was a Genesis arrow forged by Master Yuan. Zhuowen placed the tail feathers of the arrow on the bowstring and pulled the bowstring to a third of the angle. Suddenly, a monstrous killing intent surged out. With Zhuowen as the center, the horrifying killing intent spread out in all directions in a ring shape. It actually dispersed the horrifying killing intent produced by the killing array in the sword tower. Xia Yizhu, Xia Qin Fan, and the Grand Elder all stared at Zhuowen in shock. They stared fixedly at the ordinary-looking wooden bow in Zhuowen's hand. This horrifying killing intent was actually emitted by this ordinary-looking wooden bow. Moreover, its power was even more terrifying than the killing array in the sword tower. Bang! Zhuowen released the bowstring. The arrow left the bowstring with a thunderous sound. The arrow was extremely fast. It streaked across the sky and shot into the dome of the sword tower. Crackle! Instantly, the entire sword tower trembled violently. The killing array scattered throughout the sword tower emitted ripples of light. Then, the sound of cloth tearing could be heard. Shortly after, Xia Yizhu and the other two were shocked to find that the terrifying killing array in the sword tower had been torn apart. The pressure that originally enveloped the sword tower had completely dissipated. Countless cracks appeared on the originally indestructible surface of the sword tower. The sword tower was actually starting to collapse and crumble. The eternal level array formation collapsed the moment the arrow was shot. What a terrifying arrow! This, Xia Yizhu's eyes were filled with shock and awe. Even if he was at his peak, it would be difficult for him to block this arrow. He would probably be killed in one blow. Thinking of this, Xiaizhu looked at Zhuowen with an even more solemn gaze. He knew that this immortal master Zhuo before him was unfathomable. Although his aura was only that of Lord Primordial Chaos, his strength was extremely terrifying. Outside the sword tower, Zhan Chengxian stood on a huge divine sword and floated not far from the tower. Jiang Imo silently followed behind him. He looked in the direction of the sword tower, his eyes filled with worry. When he learned that Zhan Chengxian planned to kill Zhuowen as well, he was extremely shocked. He thought that Zhan Chengxian had gone crazy. If Zhuowen died in their Tai Sui sword sect, the Pil Array Immortal Alliance would definitely not let this matter rest. At that time, their Tai Sui sword sect would face a calamity of extermination. Although Zhan Chengxian said that he would destroy Zhuowen's corpse after killing him and would never admit that Zhuowen had come to their Tai Sui sword sect to avoid disaster, Jiang Mo was still filled with worry. On the divine sword, besides Zhan Chengxian and Jiang Mo, there were two other elders. Their auras were powerful, and they were not any weaker than Zhan Chengxian. They were most likely half-step creators and were the cornerstones of the Tai Sui sword sect. Of the two old men, one had a hideous scar on his face and looked very fierce. The other was a bald old man with a face as gloomy as a venomous snake. Congratulations, Sect Master Zhan. You've eliminated a huge threat. From now on, the Tai Sui sword sect will be your world. The scarred elder laughed. Hee. This Yaqin fan came back to die. It's good that she's dead now. With Sect Master Zhan's martial prowess, he'll definitely be able to lead the Tai Sui sword sect back to its peak, the bald elder said in agreement. Jiang Imo sighed at the back. These two elders were the upper echelons of the Tai Sui sword sect and were Zhan Chengshuan's loyal supporters. However, what they didn't know was that apart from Xia Qinfan, Xia Yizhu, and the Grand Elder, there was also Zhuowen, the immortal master of the Pil Array Immortal Alliance. If these two elders knew, they probably wouldn't have urged Zhan Chengxian to activate the killing formation. Rumble. All of a sudden, the huge sword tower collapsed. The killing array that was arranged on the surface of the sword tower also completely collapsed at this moment. The smile on Zhan Chengshuan's face completely froze, and all the hair on his body stood on end. This was because he felt an unprecedented killing intent enveloping his entire body. The crisis of death caused Zhan Chengxian to immediately step on the sword with his right foot, urging it to retreat continuously. Whoosh! The instant the sword tower collapsed, an arrow shot out like a bolt of lightning, shooting toward Zhan Chengshuan's vitals. The speed of this arrow was simply too fast. Although Zhan Chengxian was also continuously retreating, his speed couldn't compare to that lightning arrow. In just a short while, the arrow landed in front of Zhan Chengxian. Zhan Chengxian roared in anger and blocked the arrow with his divine sword. Crack! Unfortunately, the divine sword couldn't block the arrow at all. It shattered completely and pierced through Zhan Chengxian in the next breath. The two elders behind Zhan Chengxian immediately sensed that something was wrong. The instant the arrow shot over, they fled in panic. However, the arrow seemed to have a mind of its own. The instant the two elders fled, it directly chased after them and pierced through them, killing them in mid-air. Chapter 28:36. Refining the Heavenly Mandate Pil Rumble. The sword gauntlet completely collapsed. Zhuowen slowly walked out of the dust cloud like a peerless god of war. Xia Qinfan supported Xia Yizhu as she looked at the young man before her with a complicated expression. In Xia Qinfan's eyes, Zhuowen was an extremely powerful alchemist. As for his strength, she didn't think he was that powerful. This time, Zhuowen had come alone with her, so she was very worried. She thought that Zhuowen was putting himself in danger, and that his life might be in danger. However, Zhuowen's actions completely dumbfounded her. Not only was Zhuowen's alchemy skills so freakishly terrifying, but even his strength was so terrifying. The sword gauntlet was set up with an eternal grade formation, and Zhan Chengxian and the two elders were famous half-step creators of the Tai Sui sword sect. However, Zhuan had only shot a single arrow, and the eternal grade formation had completely collapsed. Zhan Changxian and the two elders didn't even have the chance to make a sound before their bodies and souls were destroyed. Thank you, Celestial Master Zhua, for helping me get rid of the cancer of the Tai Sui sword sect. Xia Yizhu was a wily old fox. After discovering that he had been saved, he immediately knelt before Zhuan and shed tears of gratitude. At the same time, Xia Yizhu saw Xia Qinfan looking at Zhuan with a strange expression. He wanted to make things right between the two of them. After all, from what Xia Qinfan had said, Zhuan had come to the Tai Sui sword sect for her. Xia Qinfan and the Grand Elders also knelt before Xia Yizhu and expressed their gratitude. Zhuan waved his hand, indicating that Xia Qinfan and the others didn't need to be so polite. Celestial Master Zhua, this has nothing to do with me. I tried to persuade Senior Brother Zhan, but he wouldn't listen. Jiang Mo hurriedly came before Zhuan and kowtowed repeatedly. His entire body was trembling. Zhuan was simply too powerful. He had killed the three strongest people of the Tai Sui sword sect so easily. He was like an ant in front of this person. Jiang Mo couldn't afford to offend such a character. Moreover, Jiang Mo's greatest backer, Zhan Chengxian, had also been killed. Right now, Jiang Mo's heart was filled with fear. He could only beg Zhuan to spare his life. The commotion caused by the Sword Tower had naturally attracted the attention of many disciples from the Tai Sui sword faction. Many of them rushed to the vicinity of the Sword Tower. When they saw Jiang Mo repeatedly kowtowing to Immortal Master Zhuo on the ground while Zhan Chengxian and the two old men's corpses casually fell to the side, their eyes were filled with shock. Discussions and uproars spread out like waves. No one dared to get close, and they watched from afar. What did Senior Marshal Brother Jiang Mo do wrong? He's actually kowtowing in such a humble manner. Senior Brother Zhan Chengxian and the two elders actually died. Could this have been done by Immortal Master Zhua? No, the sect master has come out of seclusion. Could it be that the sect master made a move? Everyone was suspicious as they tried to guess what had just happened. Zhuan looked indifferently at Jiang Mo, then said to Xia Yizhu, Sect Master Xia, I'll leave this person to you. Xia Yizhu cupped his hands at Zhuan, then summoned two experts from the Tai Sui sword faction to take Jiang Mo away. After that, Xia Yizhu looked at the disciples in the surroundings and said in a loud and clear voice, That traitorous disciple, Zhan Chengxian, ambushed me and severely injured me, imprisoning me in the sword tower. Today, Immortal Master Zhua saved me and killed that traitorous disciple. With just a few words, Xia Yizhu exposed Zhan Qingxuan's evil deeds over the years. At the same time, he praised Zhuan with all his might. His words were filled with admiration for Zhuan. For a moment, everyone from the Tai Sui sword faction was shocked. They had always thought that Xia Yizhu had been in seclusion in the sword tower for hundreds of years because his injuries were too severe. Now that Xia Yizhu had revealed himself, the truth was so obvious. Immediately, the disciples of the Tai Sui sword faction were filled with disdain and contempt for the dead Zhan Chengxian. They felt no pity for him. Many of them were from Zhan Qingxuan's faction who had once tried to curry favor with him. Now that Zhan Chengxian was dead and Xia Yizhu had appeared, no one dared to refute Xia Yizhu's words. Greetings, Sect Master Xia. After Xia Yizhu finished speaking, the surrounding Tai Sui sword faction cultivators all knelt on one knee and greeted Xia Yizhu in unison. Xia Yizhu waved his hand, dispersing the crowd. Soon after, he cupped his hands at Zhuan and said politely, Immortal Master Zhua, I dare not forget the kindness you've shown me today. Why don't you stay in the Tai Sui sword faction for a while, so that I can properly entertain you? Zhuan didn't refuse. He was planning to enter seclusion for a while. His true body's cultivation had already reached the peak of the primordial Chaos Lord realm. He planned to use this time to raise his true body's cultivation. Before that, he needed to refine a large amount of heavenly fate pills for his true body to break through to the heavenly fate Lord realm. Xia Yizhu treated him very well. He arranged the best room for him, provided the prettiest maids, and ordered the servants to follow him wherever he went. However, Zhuowen didn't like such formalities. After entering the room Xia Yizhu had prepared for him, he entered seclusion and refused to be disturbed by anyone. In half a month, Zhuowen had refined a large amount of heavenly fate pills. Zhuowen estimated that the heavenly fate pills he'd refined were enough to nurture several hundred heavenly fate lords for some factions. However, Zhuowen still felt that it wasn't enough. However, he'd used up all the ingredients for the heavenly fate pills, so he thickened his skin and asked Xia Yizhu for the ingredients. Of course, Zhuowen didn't ask for them for free. The Taisui sword faction would split the profits of the heavenly fate pills he refined. Xia Yizhu was naturally overjoyed. Zhuowen was an immortal master of the pill array immortal alliance. His alchemy skills far surpassed the other alchemists in their sect. Moreover, the quality of the pills he'd refined was unique, so he naturally agreed. Although the Taisui sword faction had declined greatly, it was still a Dao Palace-level faction. Its foundation was still there, and the ingredients for the heavenly fate pills weren't that precious. Thus, the Taisui sword faction had obtained a large amount of raw materials. Time flew by, and another month passed. Zhuowen had refined nearly 1,000 batches of heavenly fate pills. His room was filled with medicinal bottles, and each bottle was filled with heavenly fate pills. Zhuowen sighed lightly and put away the pill Emperor Furnace. After giving the pill Emperor Turtle a certain amount of commission, he slammed his right palm on the ground, causing the surrounding medicinal bottles to explode. Numerous heavenly fate pills with soaring medicinal energy appeared. Then, they were shattered by Zhuowen's powerful strength, forming a terrifying storm of medicinal energy that gathered above Zhuowen's head. Zhuowen's eyes glowed. He suddenly inhaled, and a devouring black hole appeared above his head. It began to madly absorb this storm of powerful medicinal energy. Chapter 28:37. Ascension to Heavenly Mandate. Master 3 days passed in the blink of an eye. Zhuowen's aura had reached an extremely frightening level. The powerful restrictions in Zhuowen's room trembled violently. Cracks appeared on them, and they finally collapsed. A terrifying aura spread out, causing strange phenomena in heaven and earth. Wind and clouds gathered above Zhuowen's pavilion. Lightning flashed like dragons, and hurricanes wreaked havoc like wild beasts. A terrifying aura swooped down like a ferocious beast. The Taisui sword sect's territory seemed to be subdued by this aura, and it actually caused a series of earthquakes. All the cultivators were shocked as they looked toward the source of the strange phenomenon. Xia Yizhu, Xia Qinfan, and the Grand Elder landed not far from Zhuowen's pavilion. When they saw the terrifying phenomenon in the sky above the pavilion, they all revealed surprised and bewildered expressions. This is the phenomenon of reaching the second step of Dao validation. Was a mortal master Zhuo really just Lord Chaos before? Xia Yizhu stared blankly in disbelief. Xia Qinfan was also shocked. When Zhuowen shot that terrifying arrow, she had already subconsciously believed that Zhuowen was in existence on the level of a god of creation. As for the fact that Zhuowen's aura was only at the peak of Lord Chaos, this was very easy to explain. Zhuowen must have used some kind of powerful concealment technique to conceal his true aura. However, the phenomenon of Zhuowen breaking through to the heavenly mandate master realm was clearly displayed before them. This caused them to fall silent. They knew that Zhuowen hadn't concealed his cultivation base and aura before. However, this made them even more shocked. Just how freakish was someone who could easily kill a half-step god of creation with his cultivation base at the peak of Lord Chaos? He's merely Master Chaotic Origin, yet he's able to slay a half-step god of creation. In the entire host region, it seems like only a few exceptional prodigies are capable of such a feat. The Grand Elder murmured to himself with a complicated expression. No, even those monstrous prodigies can't do it. Even the publicly acknowledged 5 monstrous prodigies of the 5 Dao Palaces can't kill a half-step Genesis Lord while he's still at the primordial Chaos Origin realm. Xia Yizhu shook his head, and his eyes shone with a strange light as he continued. Yi Qidong, the publicly acknowledged strongest of the 5 monstrous prodigies, has also battled half-step creators after he became a heavenly fate lord. However, he was only able to fight half-step creators to a standstill and was unable to kill them. But Celestial Master Zhuo directly killed 3 half-step gods of creation. That's simply astonishing. Xia Fan and the Grand Elder both fell silent. Xia Yizhu was right. Zhuo Wen's strength was clear for all to see. Even Yi Qidong's talent was probably slightly inferior to his. The Pill Array Immortal Alliance is really lucky to have a genius like Immortal Master Zhuo. If our Tai Sui Sword faction can have such a genius, we will definitely be like the sun in the sky. It won't be difficult for us to become the leader of all the Dao palaces. Xia Yizhu let out a long sigh, and his gaze involuntarily landed on Xia Fan. Xia Fan blushed slightly when she saw Xia Yizhu's gaze. Her beautiful eyes fell on Zhuowen's pavilion, but they dimmed slightly. How could she not understand Xia Yizhu's intentions? However, she was very clear that Zhuowen had helped her not because of love, but because he wanted to return favor. She could see that Zhuowen didn't have that kind of feelings for her. The phenomenon lasted for a long time before gradually dissipating. The door of the pavilion opened, and a white-robed youth with an otherworldly aura walked out. Congratulations, Celestial Master Zhuo, for officially stepping into the second step of the Dao validation stage and becoming a heavenly fate lord. Xia Yizhu hurriedly went up to him with a warm smile and endless compliments. Sect Master Xia is too polite. I was able to successfully become a heavenly fate lord today, thanks to the heavenly fate pill ingredients you provided. Otherwise, it wouldn't have been so easy for me to break through. Zhuowen returned the greeting with a smile and continued. Since I've already broken through, I don't plan on disturbing Sect Master Xia any longer. Xia Yizhu's expression stiffened when he heard this. He hadn't expected Zhuowen to leave the Tai Sui Sword sect so soon. He hurriedly urged him to stay, but unfortunately, Zhuowen had already made up his mind and couldn't be shaken. Is Immortal Master Zhuo going back to the Pill Array Immortal Alliance? Xia Yizhu knew that Zhuowen was determined to leave, so he didn't continue to urge him to stay. Instead, he asked where he was going. I plan on going to the 10 Extremes Corpse Sex Umbra Hell. I plan on searching for something there, Zhuowen said. Xia Yizhu's expression changed slightly, and he blurted out, Immortal Master Zhuo, are you going to the Umbra Hell to search for the realm eluding Nethersal Flower? You know about the realm eluding Nethersal Flower too? Zhuowen was stunned and looked at Xia Yizhu in surprise. Xia Yizhu was somewhat anxious and advised, Immortal Master Zhuo, it's best if you don't go to the Umbra Hell. I can clearly tell you that the Umbra Hell is much more difficult for foreign cultivators than the Umbra Hell. Moreover, even if you can find the realm eluding Nethersal Flower in the Umbra Hell, you won't be able to bring it out. You might even lose your life there. Zhuowen's eyes narrowed. He looked at Xia Yizhu and asked, Sect Master Xia, what do you mean? Immortal Master Zhuo, this involves some secrets that can't be divulged to outsiders. It won't do you any good if I tell you. Xia Yizhu hesitated and didn't dare to say anything. Sect Master Xia, tell me. I'll satisfy you whatever you want. Zhuowen stared at Xia Yizhu. He felt that the latter definitely knew some secrets about the Umbra Hell that couldn't be revealed to the public. This secret might have great implications. However, what puzzled Zhuowen was why Ji Wuming hadn't told him about the Umbra Hell secrets. Or was it that Ji Wuming didn't know the specifics of the Umbra Hell? Xia Yizhu hesitated and seemed to have made up his mind. He solemnly said to Zhuowen, Immortal Master Zhuo, I'll tell you this, but you absolutely can't tell anyone else, especially those from the 10 Ultimates Corpse sect. Otherwise, I'm afraid I'll be killed. Zhuowen naturally gave his guarantee, and Xia Yizhu finally told him everything he knew. Zhuowen's expression didn't look too good after hearing this. It turned out that the Tai Sui Sword sect had sent many cultivators into the Umbra Hell to train at its peak. Although the Umbra Hell was extremely dangerous it was rich in heavenly materials and earthly treasures. Any cultivator who trained there would make significant breakthroughs in their cultivation after they left. At that time, the Taisui sword sect had sent many cultivators into the Umbra Hell. Although many of them died, those who came out had great gains. At that time, the Taisui sword sect had a genius called Xiaohaoren. He was brilliant and was the strongest genius of the Taisui sword sect. Xiaohaoren accidentally obtained the elusive underworld soul flower in the Umbra Hell. He was overjoyed and wanted to leave the Umbra Hell immediately. However, Xiaohaoren had died. Before Xiaohaoren died, he had sent a fragmented message to his clan brother. The realm-eluding underworld soul flower is a trap. Xiaohaoren was my ancestor. With his strength back then, he could have easily left the Umbra Hell. However, he died inexplicably there. Moreover, the last message proved that the elusive underworld soul flower can't be touched in the Umbra Hell. Chapter 28:38. Killing Formation Zhuan's eyes narrowed slightly. He understood the meaning behind Xia Yiju's words. The realm-eluding nether flower was very useful to the Ten Extremities Corpse sect. Once someone from the outside world found it, the Ten Extremities Corpse sect would probably take it by force. Of course, this was just Zhuan's guess, but it made him more vigilant. He couldn't help but recall how Ji Wuming had contacted the sect master of the Ten Extremities Corpse sect and planned to exchange a fortune-grade divine pill for the realm-eluding nether flower. However, the sect master of the Ten Extremities Corpse sect didn't agree. From this, it could be seen how important the realm-eluding nether flower was to the sect master of the Ten Extremities Corpse sect. He didn't even care about a fortune-grade divine pill. Zhuan felt a little strange. The realm-eluding nether flower was only a fortune-grade divine herb. Its value couldn't compare to a fortune-grade divine pill. However, the sect master of the Ten Extremities Corpse sect valued it so much. Could it be that the realm-eluding nether flower had some unknown use? As Zhuan thought of this, the communication jade talisman at his waist suddenly lit up. Someone had sent him a message. After Zhuan checked the message, his body trembled, and a wave of killing intent erupted from him. Xia Yiju, Xia Qinfan, and the Grand Elder, who were standing beside Zhuan, were the first to bear the brunt of the killing intent. They couldn't help but take a few steps back. Their eyes were filled with shock. "Master Zhuo, what's wrong?" Xia Yiju asked cautiously. Zhuan withdrew his killing intent and cupped his fists at Xia Yiju. "Thank you for telling me the secret of the realm-eluding nether flower, Sect Master Xia. Take this as my gift to you. I still have important matters to attend to, so I'll take my leave first." Zhuan took out a jade bottle and handed it to Xia Yiju. Then, he hurriedly bid farewell and left. Xia Yiju, Xia Qinfan, and the Grand Elder looked at Zhuan's back as he hurriedly left. Their eyes were filled with confusion. "It seems Master Zhuo has some urgent matters to attend to," Xia Yiju muttered regretfully. "Sect Master, I wonder what kind of divine medicine is in the jade bottle that Master Zhuo gave you? You can open it and take a look," the Grand Elder suddenly said. Xia Yiju nodded and opened the jade bottle. His eyes were filled with pleasant surprise. "It's actually a special-grade turtle serpent pill. This is the best healing elixir among the eternal-grade elixirs. Thank you, immortal Master Zhuo." Xia Yiju couldn't help but sigh. His injuries were very serious, and his cultivation base had dropped significantly. It would take him a lot of time to recover. However, with the unique grade turtle serpent pill that Zhuan had given him, his recovery speed would definitely be greatly increased, and the recovery time would be shortened. After Zhuan left the Taisui sword faction, he immediately summoned the space-time roulette and pushed his speed to the limit. His destination was the Lightning God Garden. It was Fire Plume who had sent him the message. In the message, Fire Plume had informed him that Purple Red Cottage had been destroyed by Lightning God Park. Fire Plume, Steel Plume, and Tong Chimei had lost their minds. They had actually left the Pill Array Immortal Alliance and returned to the Lightning God Park's Purple Red Cottage. Zhuowen didn't know how Fire Plume and the others were doing. In the message, Fire Plume had only said that they were going to the Purple-Red Cottage. He hadn't said anything about their current situation. Because the Tai Sui Sword faction had declined too much, most of the sect's teleportation arrays were old and couldn't be used. Zhuowen naturally couldn't rely on the Tai Sui Sword faction's teleportation arrays to reach the Lightning God Park. Fortunately, the Tai Sui Sword faction wasn't far from the Lightning God Park. Zhuowen pushed the space-time roulette's speed to the limit, and it only took him 3 days to reach the Lightning God Park. He directly went to the Purple-Red Cottage. When Zhuowen arrived at the Purple-Red Cottage's base, his eyes blazed with fury. At this moment, the Purple-Red Cottage was littered with corpses and blood. Only ruins were left of the Purple-Red Cottage. Zhuowen, you really came. I didn't guess wrongly. You really are a righteous person. The moment you heard that your friends were in trouble, you rushed over immediately. You didn't even consider the consequences. Far away from the ruins, a beautiful figure slowly walked over. She wore a red dress, and her beautiful eyes carried a trace of charm. Zhuowen looked at the red-clothed woman in front of him. Killing intent exploded from his eyes. He stared at the red-clothed woman and said coldly, "Lazy Xuan, wear a Fire Plume, Steel Plume, and Tong Chimay?" Zhuowen didn't understand. This Lazy Xuan already knew that he was an immortal master of the Pill Array Immortal Alliance. Why did she still plan to deal with him? Was the Lightning God Park not afraid of the Pill Array Immortal Alliance? Lazy Xuan sneered. Don't worry, the 3 of them aren't dead. However, I want to ask you something. My Lightning God Park's court master chased after you. Where did he go? Lazy Xuan stared at Zhuowen. She knew that this Zhuowen wasn't simple, but she didn't think that Lei Litian would die. Even though Lei Litian's life imprint had disappeared, she still didn't believe it. He was a mid-stage Genesis overlord, the strongest expert in the Lightning God Park. How could he die just like that? Hence, Lazy Xuan had to find out where Lei Litian had gone. What does Lei Litian's whereabouts have to do with me? I think Miss Lei is looking for the wrong person. Zhuowen calmed down, but the killing intent in his eyes burned even brighter. It's fine if you don't say anything. Once I capture you, I'll extract your soul and forcefully search your memories. At that time, I'll know where Lei Litian is. Lazy Xuan snapped her fingers as she spoke, and the entire purple-red schoolhouse was enveloped by a terrifying aura. It was as if a primordial beast had been awakened. Zhuowen, this is a Genesis Overlord killing formation I prepared for you. It cost me quite a bit. Lazy Xuan slowly retreated from the barrier, and her eyes were filled with mockery. Rumble. Endless lightning wreaked havoc and filled the entire barrier. It was as if the might of the heavens had descended upon Zhuowen. These lightning bolts weren't simple. Each one of them was powerful enough to kill an eternal overlord. Even a Genesis overlord wouldn't be able to withstand so much lightning. In Lazy Xuan's eyes, Zhuowen wouldn't be able to withstand such terrifying heavenly lightning. However, she soon discovered that the young man in the lightning barrier was slowly walking over. He was actually able to withstand the terrifying might of the lightning and was glaring at her with murderous intent. Lazy Xuan frowned and snapped her fingers again. More than a dozen figures suddenly emerged from the ground. The dozen or so silhouettes had a tacit understanding. They held blood-red short swords and silently stabbed at Zhuowen's vital points. Blood prison assassins? Zhuowen's eyes narrowed. He recognized the assassins at a glance. He had been ambushed by the blood prison assassins before, so he was extremely wary of their terrifying concealment techniques. Even now, if it weren't for these assassins, he wouldn't have discovered that they were hiding underground. Swoosh, 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 swoosh. The assassins' attacks were approaching, and they unceremoniously greeted Zhuowen. Zhuowen stretched his body. His fists and feet turned into peerless weapons as he used the tyrannical art of Dao, slaying, to meet the assassins. These assassins were only at the profound theory overlord's level, but their killing techniques were extremely terrifying. Moreover, they worked together well enough to kill an eternal overlord. With Zhuan's strength, if he used the Panga's sacred body, he could instantly kill these assassins. However, Zhuan didn't. He felt that Lei Zixuan must have a hidden trump card. If he exposed his trump card too quickly, he was afraid that the enemy hiding in the dark would be afraid and secretly retreat. He was waiting for the person hiding in the dark to make a move. Then, he would kill them one by one. Chapter 2839. Blood Lightning. Zhuan's strength has exceeded my expectations. He actually managed to withstand a Genesis realm killing formation and survive the onslaught of a dozen blood prison assassins. Yin Wuxia frowned in surprise as he watched the scene unfold in the ruins of the purple-red schoolhouse. Elder Yin, you must not underestimate that child. Zhuowen's cultivation is not high. However, his physical body is extremely powerful. Back then, I had chased after that child to kill him. Yet, I was unable to completely eliminate him. Huangwu stood beside Yin Wuxia, his gaze solemn as he spoke in a low voice. In the past, he had chased after Zhuowen partly because Zhuowen had killed a few princes of the Huangji clan, but more importantly, it was because Huangwu coveted the Hou-Yi divine arrow on Zhuowen. Although Huangwu had never personally witnessed how terrifying Hou-Yi's godly arrow was, he had seen it kill Grandmaster Yuan Hui from the images of the Sun-Moon demonic mirror. He knew how terrifying it was. Huangwu had once thought about it. If he had been in Grandmaster Yuan Hui's position, his performance might have been better, but he would definitely have been injured. And this was because Zhuowen's cultivation base was very low, and he was unable to unleash the full power of Hou-Yi's divine arrow. If he could get his hands on the arrow, Huangwu was confident that he would be invincible among his peers. He wouldn't even fear a peak Genesis realm cultivator and could even kill them. As long as he could get his hands on the arrow, Huangwu was confident that he could lead the Huangji family to another peak. Even if the Huangji family couldn't become a Dao Palace faction, it would still rank among the top 3 Dao Palaces. Oh, Patriarch Huangwu, you personally pursued Zhuowen, but you still couldn't kill him? Elder Yin was surprised. She recalled that Zhuowen's cultivation was only Lord Chaos Origin when he participated in the Pill Tempering Assembly. Now that he was a Heaven's Mandate Master, he should have ascended after the Pill Tempering Assembly. In other words, when Huangwu chased after Zhuowen, this Zhuowen was actually just a Chaos Origin Lord. How did he manage to escape with his life? Yin Wuxia was in disbelief. At the same time, he started to take Zhuowen seriously. Yes, this kid is not simple. Elder Yin, you better not underestimate him. Huangwu cautioned. He suspected that the disappearance of Lei Litian was definitely related to this Zhuowen, but he did not tell Yin Wuxia about this. Huangwu didn't even mention anything about Hou-Yi's god arrow. He had his own selfish motives. He knew that the origins of Hou-Yi's divine arrow were extraordinary. If he told this to Yin Wuxia, he was afraid that Yin Wuxia would covet it. Yin Wuxia was an elder of the 10 Extremes Yin Corpse sect, and he was also a late-stage god of creation. Whether it was status or cultivation, Huangwu was far above him. If Yin Wuxia wanted to compete with him, Huangwu knew that he would not stand a chance. Whoosh, whoosh, whoosh. Fierce, bloody light, accompanied by terrifying lightning, constantly flashed in the lightning barrier. Zhuowen was inside the lightning barrier. His eyes were cold, and his figure was like the wind. Bolts of lightning fell on his figure, but they only hit his afterimage. The dozen or so blood prison assassins were expressionless as they stabbed out with their bloody swords. Every move was fatal and merciless. The cultivation of these blood prison assassins was not very strong. They were all at the level of profound secrets lord. However, their cooperation was too good. Their combined strength was terrifying, and they could even kill an ordinary eternal overlord. With Zhuowen's current strength, even if he did not use the power of the Panga's sacred body, it would not be difficult for him to get rid of these blood prison assassins. However, he was still trapped in the god of creation killing formation. The lightning contained within was extremely terrifying. Zhuowen was dodging rather awkwardly, so he could not divert his attention to get rid of the blood prison assassins who were sneak attacking him in one go. Of course, this was also deliberately done by Zhuowen. If he had displayed the full power of the Panga's sacred body, these assassins would have been a piece of cake for him. He was waiting for the hidden hand that was lurking in the dark. If he guessed correctly, the hidden hand might be Yin Wuxie and Huangwu. Outside the killing formation, Lazy Xuan put her hands behind her back and frowned slightly. She stared at Zhuowen, who was inside the formation, with surprise in her beautiful eyes. She had used a God of Creation stage killing formation. Even Lei Litian, the master of the Lightning God Garden, would be in an extremely sorry state in the face of this killing formation. Against the combined might of these dozen or so blood prison assassins, there was most likely a possibility that he would be injured. Although Zhuowen was also in an extremely difficult situation, in Lazy Xuan's heart, Zhuowen was just the Lord of Destiny. How could he be compared to Lei Litian? Now, however, Lazy Xuan no longer dared to look down on Zhuowen. Lazy Xuan even had a hunch that Lei Litian's disappearance might have been caused by Zhuowen. Thinking of this possibility, a chill rushed from the soles of her feet to the top of her head. She only felt a chill all over her body. I must kill this kid. Lazy Xuan came back to her senses, and her beautiful eyes were filled with killing intent. She took out a golden talisman, bit the tip of her tongue, and spat out a mouthful of blood on it. After the golden talisman was stained with blood, it was immediately dyed blood red, and it was full of a demonic aura. Lazy Xuan held the blood-red talisman in her jade-like hand and threw it into the killing formation. Suddenly, the blue lightning in the killing formation turned into terrifying blood-red thunderbolts. The killing array's aura skyrocketed, like a ferocious beast that had just awoken, causing people to shudder. Zhuowen's face changed slightly. He didn't expect the thunderbolts of the killing formation to suddenly become so terrifying. He was careless and was struck in the chest by a blood-red thunderbolt. Blood exploded, revealing a deep bloody hole, and white bones could be vaguely seen. Zhuowen's eyes were solemn. He used his body movement with all his strength to avoid the blood-red thunderbolts. After the thunderbolts in the killing formation turned blood-red, not only did their power become terrifying, but their speed also increased by several times. If it weren't for this, Zhuowen wouldn't have been injured by the blood-red thunderbolts just now. Zhuowen's eyes were filled with anger, but he was very calm. He still dodged in a panic and didn't expose his Panga's sacred body. Boom, boom, boom. The blood-red thunderbolts spread and scattered into a thunderstorm. More than a dozen blood prison assassins shuttled back and forth in the thunderstorm without being affected at all. This killing formation was controlled by someone, and it only targeted Zhuowen. Zhuowen's injuries were getting more and more serious. He knew that he couldn't delay any longer. He had to deal with the blood prison assassins first. Thinking of this, Zhuowen stomped his right foot, causing the whole earth to tremble a few times. Zhuowen disappeared like an arrow leaving the bow. At this moment, Zhuowen's speed was much faster than before. He instantly swept in front of the nearest blood prison assassin and punched out, causing the space to explode. The blood prison assassin was expressionless and his eyes were indifferent. The blood-red sword in his right hand was still aimed at Zhuowen's vital point. Zhuowen's left hand snatched the blood-red sword from the assassin's right hand. With a sudden force, the assassin's right hand was directly broken. Chapter 2840. Lazy Xuan's Concerns Whoosh. 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 The moment Zhuowen killed the blood prison assassin, the rest of the blood prison assassins were expressionless. They took advantage of this opportunity to attack fiercely, wanting to kill Zhuowen with one blow. Zhuowen growled. He felt that these blood prison assassins were like flies. They were very annoying and couldn't be swatted away. Zhuowen blocked some of the attacks and used his agility to dodge at the same time. However, two blood prison assassins still took advantage of the opening and stabbed their blood swords into his body. Zhuowen's eyes were cold. His right palm moved like the wind and instantly fell on the heads of the two blood prison assassins, annihilating their heads and souls. Now, every time Zhuan killed a blood prison assassin, he would expose a flaw and be attacked by the rest of the blood prison assassins. Although Zhuan's body had withstood dozens of swords from the blood prison assassins and was bleeding profusely, he was still full of energy and constantly finished off the remaining blood prison assassins. When Zhuan was about to finish off the last blood prison assassin, the assassin stared at Zhuan and said coldly, "Zhuan, you have killed many of our assassins without any scruples. You have been put on the blood prison's kill list. Next, you will face the endless pursuit of our blood prison. If it weren't for your blood prison attacking me again and again, would I have killed your assassins? Since you have come to kill me, then come at me. I will send all of you down to see the king of hell." Zhuan's eyes were cold. After saying this, he grabbed the blood prison assassin's neck with his right hand and squeezed hard, completely crushing him. The power of the Panga's sacred body was too terrifying. Zhuan had not fully exerted the power of the Panga's sacred body, but he could still easily crush Lord Xuanji and an ordinary eternal overlord with his bare hands. After killing the last blood prison assassin, another blood lightning bolt suddenly struck down and blasted Zhuan's back, causing him to fall to the ground. Zhuan rolled on the ground, dodging the blood lightning that continuously struck him from behind. He then rushed towards Lei Zixuan, who was outside the killing array. At this moment, Lei Zixuan's beautiful face was incomparably pale. Just now, in order to increase the power of the killing formation's lightning, she had paid a great price. Now, she had almost no combat strength left. How is that possible? How could this Zhuan be so strong? Could it be that Landmaster Lei wasn't missing, but really dead? Moreover, he died at the hands of this brat? Lei Zixuan continuously retreated. Her beautiful eyes stared fixedly at the young man who was getting closer and closer to her. Her heart turned cold as she felt an unprecedented fear. "Elderine, Patriarch Wang, when are you going to stop watching the show?" Lei Zixuan shrieked. She couldn't endure Zhuan's gaze that was filled with killing intent and started to call out to Yin Wuxia and Huang Wu, who were hiding in the dark. "This kid is indeed extraordinary. He actually managed to survive the Genesis grade killing formation and even killed a dozen blood prison assassins at the level of the Master of Profundity." In the darkness, Yin Wuxia's gaze was calm as he slowly walked out. Although Zhuan's performance just now was shocking, it was still within the acceptable range. Yin Wuxia himself was a late-stage Genesis Lord. Although the killing formation that Lei Zixuan had brought out was powerful, it could only trap a mid-stage Genesis Lord at most. However, if she wanted to trap Yin Wuxia, it would probably be a little difficult. Yin Wuxia saw that Zhuan couldn't even break through the killing formation, so he naturally didn't put Zhuan in his eyes too much. He felt that as long as he made a move, this brat would definitely die. Huang Wu followed behind Yin Wuxia. His eyes flickered, and his expression was somewhat gloomy. Zhuan's strength had increased too quickly. Before the Pill Rhythm Grand Assembly, this Zhuan had to flee pathetically from his hands. He wasn't a match for him at all. But now, in such a terrifying killing formation, he actually managed to survive and even killed a dozen blood prison assassins from the Master of Profundity. One had to know that those who could become blood prison assassins weren't ordinary cultivators. They were basically powerhouses who could assassinate powerhouses of the same level. The hands of those blood prison assassins were stained with the blood of many of the Master of Profundity's experts. They had even joined forces to assassinate eternal overlords. Huang Wu had thought that if he were in such a situation, he wouldn't be able to hold on for long. He would be severely injured or even killed. However, Zhuan had survived. Huang Wu knew that if he attacked alone, it would be impossible for him to take down Zhuan. He might even be killed instead. So, it's you guys, Zhuan came to the edge of the killing formation. While dodging the blood lightning strikes, he coldly looked at Yin Wuxia and Huang Wu, who had walked out from the darkness. Yin Wuxia laughed heartily and cast a sidelong glance at Zhuan. "Zhuan, I admit that you are indeed amazing. You're just a heaven's destined master, yet you have such strength. Even the monstrous genius of the 10 extremities Corpse sect, Ghost Plume, is inferior to you. But now, you haven't stepped into the third step of the Tao validation realm. The gap between you and me is as wide as a chasm. If you surrender now and kill yourself in front of me, I can still leave you with an intact corpse. Wuxia was very conceited. He didn't even look Zhuowen in the eye. He definitely had Zhuowen in his grasp. Huang Wu stood behind Wuxia with a mocking expression. Zhuowen, you're already an arrow at the end of its flight. Your situation is bleak. Don't tell me you still want to stubbornly resist? Zhuowen completely ignored Wuxia and Huang Wu, who were threatening him. Instead, he coldly looked at Lei Zixuan and said, "We're a fire plume, steel plume, and Tong Chimei." Wuxia and Huang Wu's appearance had calmed Lei Zixuan's heart, and she felt much more confident. Lei Zixuan's beautiful eyes cast a sidelong glance at Zhuowen. She couldn't hide the mocking expression on her face. "Zhuowen, you're really too gullible. Let me tell you the truth. Fire Plume and the others are still in the Pill Array Immortal Alliance." "Then how did you get Fire Plume's communication Jade Talisman?" Zhuowen asked gloomily. "Fire Plume is just a Heaven's destined master. It's too easy for us to steal her communication Jade Talisman without anyone knowing." Lei Zixuan took out a Jade Talisman from her spirit ring and waved it in front of Zhuowen. Her pretty face was full of pride. The moment Zhuowen saw the Jade Talisman, he didn't become flustered and exasperated like Lei Zixuan had imagined. Instead, he let out an unbridled laugh. "What are you laughing at?" Lei Zixuan's expression was somewhat ugly. Wuxia and Huang Wu also felt that it was strange. They looked at the unbridled Zhuowen as if they were looking at an idiot. "Since Fire Plume and the others are safe, then I don't need to be afraid." Zhuowen sighed in his heart. Previously, he was afraid not only because Huang Wu and Wuxia were hiding in the shadows, but also because the safety of Fire Plume and the others was in Lei Zixuan's hands. Chapter 2841. Explode. What's the meaning of this? Lei Zixuan furrowed her brows as she sensed that something was amiss. She yelled at Zhuowen. In her opinion, Zhuowen was really too strange. He was clearly only a Heaven's Mandate master cultivator, but he had been able to survive the combined attack of a Genesis Realm killing array and a dozen Blood Prison assassins. He had even managed to kill them. She had already begun to believe that Lei Litian's disappearance was definitely because of this Zhuowen. Thus, she didn't dare to be careless when facing this Zhuowen. Wuxia sneered. "I think you've lost your mind. You're still laughing so arrogantly even when you're about to die. You must be tired of living." Huang Wu's eyes flashed, and he subconsciously retreated. He knew how terrifying the Ho-E divine arrow that he had obtained from Zhuowen was. If he really activated it, he wouldn't be able to withstand it. However, he also knew that once Zhuowen activated the Ho-E divine arrow, he would be completely powerless, and there would be many openings. At that time, he would be able to capture this brat easily. Wuxia was very powerful. He was a late-stage god of creation, and he was much more powerful than Huang Wu. With Wuxia leading the charge, Huang Wu relaxed slightly. However, he didn't dare to relax too much. "The one who's tired of living isn't me. It's you." Zhuowen's voice was calm as his body glowed with a translucent light. A powerful aura surged from his body as if he were an awakened mutant beast. Originally, his body was in tatters and covered in blood, and he looked like a warrior who was about to die on a battlefield. However, at this moment, these terrifying injuries were actually healing at a speed visible to the naked eye under the translucent light radiating from his body. Bang! 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 Zhuowen took a step forward and bombarded the edge of the killing formation with a series of punches. One after another, fist seals appeared on the edge of the killing formation as if they were branded on it. Then, the massive killing formation trembled violently. The blood lightning within the formation became even denser and more terrifying, and it landed on Zhuowen's body like a vortex. The blood-red lightning was extremely terrifying and could tear apart any material. However, Zhuan's physical body resisted it. When the blood lightning struck, it only left faint charred marks on Zhuan's body. How is that possible? Is this guy's body really that terrifying? Lei Zixuan's beautiful eyes narrowed into needles. She found this unbelievable. Yin Wuxie and Huang Wu's faces darkened. They were shocked that Zhuan had been hiding his strength. Bang, bang, bang. The blood lightning array trembled more and more violently, as if it would collapse at any moment. Given Zhuan's strength, it would be difficult for him to use brute force to break the blood lightning array. However, he was still an eternal-level array godmaster. He was not far from the Genesis level, so he could figure out the specific trajectory of the Blood Thunder array. During the process of being bombarded, he had found many flaws and weaknesses in the Blood Lightning array. Now that he had displayed the full power of the 5-star Panga's sacred body and focused on the weaknesses of the Blood Lightning array, Zhuan believed that he would be able to completely break the Blood Lightning array in no time. Oh no, the array can't hold on any longer. Zhuan also knows array Dao. Lei Zixuan's beautiful face changed drastically, and she exclaimed, "Oomph, you have some skills. However, I will definitely make you suffer in my hands today." Yin Wuxie snorted coldly. Like a gust of wind, she charged towards Zhuan. Yin Wuxie knew that he had completely offended Zhuan. If he let Zhuan go now, he would definitely complain to the Pill Array Immortal Alliance. Perhaps the Pill Array Immortal Alliance would not dare to do anything to the Ten Extremities Yin Corps sect. However, the Ten Extremities Yin Corps sect would definitely hand over Yin Wuxie to appease the Pill Array Immortal Alliance. When Yin Wuxie found out, he would definitely be in a miserable situation and would not be able to bear the consequences. Therefore, he had to kill this person now. He could not let the tiger return to the mountain. Zhuan also threw out a punch. When the fist and palm collided, the ripples that spread out caused the entire ground to explode. It was as if an unprecedented earthquake had occurred. Zhuan groaned. His right fist was directly fractured, and he kept retreating. On the other hand, Yin Wuxie's body only swayed a little before he stabilized himself. His eyes were filled with killing intent as he continued to rush toward Zhuan. He wanted to completely kill Zhuan here and now. Zhuan's face darkened. He had underestimated Yin Wuxie's strength. Yin Wuxie's cultivation was only one level higher than Lei Litian's, but their strength was worlds apart. He was much stronger than Lei Litian. Zhuan's 5-star Panga's sacred body was currently facing Yin Wuxie head-on. He was just looking for a beating. Bang, bang, bang. Yin Wuxie's following attacks became fiercer and more terrifying. Every move was fatal, destroying the laws and collapsing the space. Zhuan was almost beaten back. He was completely at a disadvantage, and the injuries on his body were getting more and more serious. Fortunately, Zhuan's self-healing ability was too abnormal. Although his injuries were serious, he was slowly recovering. He was barely able to fight Yin Wuxie. Yin Wuxie became more and more surprised as the fight went on. With his strength, it was easy for him to kill thousands of Destiny Masters with one move. However, Zhuan was only a Destiny Master. He had fought hundreds of rounds with him, but he only had the upper hand. He was unable to kill this person. Huang Wu, who was not far away, did not step forward to participate in the fight. Instead, he stood in the distance and silently observed the battle. He was very afraid of Zhuan's Hou Yi's godly arrow. He wanted to wait until Zhuan used the Hou Yi's godly arrow before he attacked Zhuan. Otherwise, if he attacked now, he would be severely injured by Zhuan in just a few moves. After all, the strength displayed by this person was too terrifying. He was actually able to fight Yin Wuxie, a late-stage creator, without being defeated. He was far from being able to compete with him. Bang! Invisible ripples surged out like a vortex. Then, Zhuan let out a muffled groan as Yin Wuxie's fist smashed into his chest. His entire body fell to the ground, sinking into the depths of the ground so deep that the bottom couldn't be seen. Yin Wuxie was high above. Victory was in his hands. You're very strong. Although you're only a destiny master, it's not easy for you to fight with me to this extent. It's time for me to finish you off. As for the Pill Array Immortal Alliance, I'll make up a suitable reason for your death. You can go in peace. Wuxia said calmly. He faced his right palm up and gently squeezed. Instantly, a terrifying pitch-black energy gathered and rotated in his palm. Bang! Wuxia's right palm suddenly covered the bottom of the pit. Instantly, the pitch-black energy in his palm transformed into an incomparably huge black skull. The black skull opened its ghastly mouth and abruptly descended, swallowing the entire crater. Rumble. However, at this moment, a vast killing intent, as vast as the universe, suddenly exploded, causing the surrounding atmosphere to become stifling. The black skull directly collapsed into a black fog. A ray of blood-red light shot out from the black fog, streaking across the sky and shooting towards Wuxia. The corners of Wuxia's eyes twitched as he felt an extremely terrifying threat. He roared loudly and exploded with the most powerful energy in his body. He fiercely slammed his palm against the blood-red light. Pucci. The blood-red light was very straightforward. It pierced through Wuxia's attack and through his palm. It swept out from his shoulder, bringing with it a bloody mist. Wuxia spat out a mouthful of blood. His right hand was directly crippled and fell to the ground in a miserable state. Now's the time. Chapter 2842. Hunting down Wuxia, the black mist completely dissipated, and Huangwu arrived in front of the figure in the depths of the black mist. The ecstasy in Huangwu's eyes became even more pronounced. He knew that he was about to kill his greatest enemy, and the secrets on this brat's body would belong to him. But very quickly, he felt that something was off. He was indeed close to Zhuowen, but at the same time, he acutely felt that an extremely terrifying killing intent had instantly locked onto him, causing all the hairs on his body to stand on end as he felt the threat of death. Huangwu was no stranger to this killing intent. Wasn't this the same killing intent that had been released by Hou Yi's divine arrow? However, Huangwu had seen with his own eyes that Zhuowen had already unleashed that Hou Yi's divine arrow and severely wounded a late-stage god of creation like Wuxia. Logically speaking, Zhuowen should be completely exhausted, and there was no way he could unleash a second Hou Yi's divine arrow. However, at that moment, Huangwu could see Zhuo when standing proudly in the depths of the black fog. He held an ordinary-looking wooden bow in his right hand. A divine arrow was knocked on the bowstring of the wooden bow. Huangwu could tell that the divine arrow on the wooden bow wasn't the blood-stained Hou Yi's divine arrow. Instead, it was a very ordinary divine arrow. Furthermore, he discovered that the terrifying killing intent wasn't emanating from the ordinary divine arrow. Instead, it was erupting from the wooden bow, and it was extremely sharp and frightening. This guy still has a trump card up his sleeve. Huangwu had a bad feeling, and his scalp went numb. He wanted to retreat, but he was simply too close to Zhuowen. It was impossible for him to stop and turn around, so he could only grit his teeth and charge forward. Zhuowen died. Although Huangwu felt that something was wrong, the arrow was already knocked on the bowstring, and he had no choice but to unleash it. His only choice was to kill Zhuowen. After all, the two of them were already in a state of life and death. Zhuowen was very calm, and a mocking smile appeared on his face as he looked to Huangwu, who was getting closer and closer to him. He pulled the bowstring to 1/3 of the arc, pinched the feather at the end of the arrow, and gently loosened it. There was a loud explosion that sounded like countless thunderbolts exploding in the sky. Then, the divine arrow turned into a ray of bloodlight and flew toward Huangwu at an extremely fast speed. The divine arrow and Huangwu's attack fiercely collided, creating extremely terrifying ripples. Huangwu screamed miserably. His attacks were like clay chickens and pottery dogs, unable to withstand a single blow from the divine arrow. The divine arrow pierced through Huangwu's arms like a hot knife through butter and into my chest. Blood mist burst out from Huangwu's body, and it was glistening with blood. Huang Wu kept pushing the power in his body, trying to stop the arrow from piercing through his body. However, all of this was useless. All of his efforts were in vain. He could only watch as the divine arrow pierced through his entire body. His body was also torn to pieces by the powerful force of the divine arrow. Zhuowen took a step forward, formed a sword with his right hand, and pointed it at Huang Wu's forehead. The power of the 5 stars Pangu, sacred body, erupted without any reservation, completely annihilating Huang Wu's remaining divine soul. Huang Wu stared at Zhuowen, and his breath was cut off. He died with his eyes wide open. Zhuowen quickly put away Huang Wu's spiritual ring, and his gaze fell on Yin Wuxia, whose right arm was pierced by the divine arrow. At this moment, Yin Wuxia was in an extremely sorry state. His right arm was completely broken, and there was a bloody hole in his chest. Because he was severely injured by the divine arrow, Yin Wuxia's divine soul was also damaged, and his consciousness was a little blurry. However, Yin Wuxia knew that he had to escape. If he didn't escape, he would die. Therefore, after he came back to his senses, he didn't hesitate to run away. Zhuowen silently looked at Yin Wuxia, who was running away in a panic, and frowned. Both of the divine arrows he shot were ordinary divine arrows. Relying on the powerful killing intent of the Ho-I godly Bao, the ordinary divine arrows became extraordinarily powerful. However, they were only able to seriously injure Yin Wuxia, and he even had the strength to run away. Even Huang Wu couldn't completely kill him. In the end, Zhuowen had to add another strike to kill Huang Wu. Zhuowen knew that this was most likely due to the fact that the divine arrow he had hired was only at the God of Creation stage. If the Ho-I godly Bao was used with the Ho-I godly Bao, Huang Wu and Yin Wuxia wouldn't even have the time to resist before they were blasted into pieces. Not far away, Lei Zixuan was indescribably shocked. She saw with her own eyes that Huang Wu was easily killed, and Yin Wuxia fled in panic. She felt a trace of regret in her heart, and she immediately ran away without hesitation. If she didn't run away now, she would probably follow in Huang Wu's footsteps. Unfortunately, just as Lei Zixuan was about to run away, she was targeted by Zhuowen. In just a short while, Zhuowen caught up to her. Zhuowen grabbed Lei Zixuan and used a powerful force to restrict her movements. He casually threw her to a corner of the space-time roulette, while Zhuowen controlled the space-time roulette to chase after the fleeing Yin Wuxia. Because Yin Wuxia was seriously injured, his speed wasn't fast. However, the intense feeling of fear caused Yin Wuxia to burn her blood essence to escape with all her might. He was extremely regretful. He never thought that Zhuowen, who he looked down on, would be so powerful that he almost killed him. If he didn't have some trump cards, he would have died under that arrow. How could this kid have such a terrifying divine artifact? What kind of divine artifact is it? Yin Wuxia roared in his heart, and his emotions were filled with despair. He knew that even if he escaped this time, his following days wouldn't be easy. He had completely offended Zhuowen, who was an immortal master of the Pill Array Immortal Alliance. Attempting to assassinate an immortal master of the Pill Array Immortal Alliance would definitely be despised by the Pill Array Immortal Alliance. If the matter of him trying to assassinate Zhuowen was exposed, even the Ten Extremities Yin Corp sect wouldn't be able to protect him. Moreover, he knew that the Ten Extremities Yin Corp sect would definitely hand him over to appease the anger of the Pill Array Immortal Alliance. I can't return to the Ten Extremities Yin Corp sect. This time, when I go back, I must conceal my identity. Yin Wuxia's gaze was gloomy as he muttered to himself. Old dog Yin, are you regretting now? When you planned to assassinate me, why didn't you think of this outcome? An unhurried voice slowly sounded, and Yin Wuxia's hair stood on end. He was too familiar with this voice. Wasn't this the main culprit who had caused him to be in such a sorry state? Yin Wuxia didn't turn around to look. He could feel that Zhuowen's oppressive aura was getting closer and closer to him. Yin Wuxia was shocked. He had already burned his essence blood to increase his speed, but Zhuowen was still able to catch up to him. This was unbelievable. Chapter 2843. Servant. He was very confident in the speed of the space-time roulette. The space-time roulette was the most powerful flying artifact of the space-time beast race. The space-time beast race was one of the top 10 races in the Eldritch domain. They had a strong foundation and were skilled in the power of space-time. The space-time roulette they created was very fast. As Zhuowen's cultivation continued to improve, he became more familiar with the space-time law of the space-time roulette. The space-time roulette in his hands was naturally much faster than before. In Wuxia was not good at speed. Moreover, he was severely injured and had less than 10% of his strength left. Even if he burned his blood essence, his speed was far from comparable to the space-time roulette. Zhuowen, let me live. I've been presumptuous. Today's matter is between you and me. Let's pretend nothing happened. In Wuxia's scalp went numb. He hurriedly shouted at Zhuowen. Zhuowen sneered and said, "Now you're meat on the chopping block, and I'm the knife. You're definitely going to die. Don't you think it's a joke to say that to me?" With that, Zhuowen took out a divine arrow from the great world and knocked it on the bowstring. He gently pulled the bowstring. Suddenly, a terrifying killing intent swept out like a storm. In Wuxia's expression changed drastically. He did not expect Zhuowen to be able to shoot such a terrifying arrow again. He was now an arrow at the end of its flight. If he was hit by this arrow again, he would definitely die. Thinking of this, In Wuxia hurriedly begged for mercy. "Immortal Master Zhuo, I beg you to let me live. As long as you let me live, I'll agree to anything." "Oh, if I let you live, you'll agree to anything?" Zhuowen asked softly. In Wuxia felt that something was wrong, but it was a moment of life and death. He could only bite the bullet and agree. "In that case, hand over your spirit imprint and submit to me," Zhuowen said in an indifferent voice. Zhuowen originally planned to kill In Wuxia, but he quickly remembered that In Wuxia was an elder of the Ten Extremities In Corpse sect. He probably had a high position in the Ten Extremities In Corpse sect. If he didn't know that the Ten Extremities In Corpse sect's underworld was interfered with by someone, he might not hesitate to shoot the arrow. But he knew that there was someone in the Ten Extremities In Corpse sect. He planned to spare In Wuxia. Was Zhuowen. Xiai. In Wuxia. In hell was it? World realm elusive underworld soul flower? Was underworld elusive world? Underworld soul flower. Xia Zhu studio was. Moreover, he also wanted to know what use the realm eluding underworld soul flower was in the hands of the sect leader of the Ten Extremities In Corpse sect. He actually valued the realm eluding underworld soul flower so much that he was willing to resort to such means. In Wuxia's face darkened when he heard Zhuowen's words. He immediately refused. He was a late-stage god of creation and an elder of the Ten Extremities In Corpse sect. He had always been the one to control the lives of others. How could he be willing to become someone else's slave? You don't agree? Zhuowen's gaze was gloomy as he drew the bowstring back a little more. Instantly, the killing intent directed at In Wuxia became even more terrifying and terrifying. In Wuxia's heart tightened. The shadow of death enveloped his body. He had no doubt that if Zhuowen shot the arrow, he would die without a doubt. "Wait, stop. I agree." Seeing the killing intent growing more and more terrifying, In Wuxia completely let go of her dignity and lowered her head to Zhuowen. He knew very well that if he still didn't agree, he would really die. Between his life and his dignity, In Wuxia chose the former without any hesitation. Zhuowen did not put down the Hoi divine bow because of this. He said coldly, "Then hand over your soul imprint first." In Wuxia stopped. His eyes flashed, and he revealed an extremely unwilling expression. However, when he sensed the increasingly terrifying killing intent in Zhuowen's eyes, he let out a soft sigh. His right hand formed a sword and pointed at his forehead, and he threw the soul imprint to Zhuowen. Zhuowen caught the spiritual mark and inspected it. After confirming that it hadn't exploded, he nodded and put away the Hoi divine bow and divine arrow. The terrifying killing intent instantly disappeared. In Wuxia, who had been on tenterhooks, also heaved a sigh of relief. Wuxia's expression was complicated as she looked at the white-clothed youth with his hands behind his back. He didn't expect that he would become this person's slave in the end. If others knew that he, an elder of the Ten Extremes Corpse sect and a late-stage Genesis lord, had become a slave of a master destiny, they would probably laugh at him. However, Wuxia had no choice. Wuxia sighed softly. He already regretted chasing after Zhuowen. Originally, he didn't have much conflict with Zhuowen. After Zhuowen became a celestial master of the Pill Array Immortal Alliance, he didn't want to provoke Zhuowen. Even if the naughty Shiva sent him a message, he still didn't plan to do so. However, after Lei Zixuan and Huang Wu gave him an idea, he agreed to it. Now, he had ended up like this. As he thought of this, Wuxia looked at Lei Zixuan, who was trembling in the corner of the space-time roulette. "Greetings, Master." Wuxia had no choice but to call Zhuowen Master unwillingly. Zhuowen nodded. He didn't care about Wuxia's attitude. Instead, he said indifferently, "Wuxia, do you know about the underworld hell of the Ten Extremes Corpse sect?" Wuxia was surprised. Naturally, he nodded repeatedly to show that he knew. "You should also know about the realm-eluding underworld soul flower, right?" Wuxia was surprised. This was common knowledge in the host region. Although he didn't know why Zhuowen would ask such an obvious question, he could only nod respectfully. He didn't dare to be negligent in the slightest. "I heard that once foreign cultivators pluck the realm-vanish undersoul flower, they will be killed by the experts of your Ten Extremities Corpse sect and snatch away the realm-vanish undersoul flower?" Zhuowen asked casually. Wuxia's pupil shrank. He fell silent, but his heart was not calm. The realm-eluding underworld soul flower was considered a taboo in the Ten Extremes Corpse sect. Zhuowen's question was actually considered a secret of the Ten Extremes Corpse sect. It was information that couldn't be leaked. After all, Zhuowen was an outsider. Wuxia didn't know how Zhuowen knew about this. "Speak," Zhuowen said indifferently. Wuxia's heart trembled, and she hurriedly said, "Master, there is indeed such a thing. However, this is a huge secret of the Ten Extremes Corpse sect. For Master to know such a thing, you are indeed omnipotent." Zhuowen didn't care about Wuxia's flattery. Instead, he continued, "If I enter the underworld hell and obtain the realm-eluding underworld soul flower, how do I avoid the eyes of the Ten Extremes Corpse sect and smoothly take it away?" Wuxia smiled bitterly and said, "Master, the realm-eluding underworld soul flower is too important to the sect leader. Once the realm-eluding underworld soul flower appears, the sect leader will definitely know immediately. Then, he will send experts to pluck it." Chapter 28:44. Thunder God's Tereshua when narrowed his eyes and said in a low voice, "Tell me how to avoid the spies your Ten Extremes Corpse sect placed at the location where the elusive realm underworld soul flower will appear, and then smoothly bring out the elusive realm underworld soul flower. Don't talk about useless things." Wuxia said helplessly, "Master, there's something you don't know. The Ten Extremes Corpse sect has set up many spies in the Umbra Hell. Any realm elusive underworld soul flower, or any treasure more valuable than the realm elusive underworld soul flower, would probably be recorded by these spies immediately. Then, the corresponding countermeasures would be taken. It's very difficult for you to avoid these spies and obtain the elusive underworld flower." Zhuowen calmly looked at Wuxia until the latter's scalp went numb from being stared at. Wuxia sighed dejectedly and said, "This lowly one has an idea, but I'll have to trouble my lord." "Tell me," Zhuowen said indifferently. "It's like this. The elusive underworld flower is very important to the sect leader of the Ten Extremities Corpse sect. As for the specific reason, I'm not too sure. Usually, if a foreign cultivator obtains the elusive underworld flower, it won't end well. However, if a disciple of our sect obtains it and hands it over to the sect leader, he will be handsomely rewarded." In Wuxia smiled ingratiatingly. Zhuowen narrowed his eyes and said, "You mean you want me to join your 10 Extremities In Corp sect and become a part of it?" In Wuxia hurriedly said, "Master, please don't misunderstand. This is indeed the best method this little one can think of. Furthermore, this little one's life and death is completely in the hands of Master. This little one doesn't dare to play any tricks." Zhuo nodded. In Wuxia's soul imprint was completely under his control. If he wanted to kill In Wuxia, he only needed a thought. "Help me arrange my disciple's identity. It's best if you can arrange for me to be in a position related to the Umbra Hell," Zhuowen said indifferently. In Wuxia hurriedly nodded and bowed, agreeing repeatedly. "Now, follow me to Thunder God Garden," Zhuowen said and left with In Wuxia. Lei Zixuan, who was lying in the corner of the space-time roulette, turned pale when she heard what Zhuowen said. "Immortal Master Zhua, it's all my fault. It has nothing to do with Thunder God Court. Please spare Thunder God Court this once," Lei Zixuan hurriedly said. Zhuowen's eyes were cold as he said expressionlessly, "Nothing? That's the funniest joke I've ever heard. Back then, your Lightning God Garden's Lei Litian teamed up with Huang Wu and chased me until I was in an extremely sorry state. If it wasn't for the fact that I have some powerful trump cards, I'm afraid I would be dead by now." Lei Zixuan revealed a hopeful expression and quickly asked, "Immortal Master Zhua, do you know where my master is now? You must know about it, right?" Zhuowen said indifferently, "He's dead, and I was the one who killed him." When he said this, not only Lei Zixuan, but even In Wuxia couldn't help but suck in a breath of cold air. However, In Wuxia now thought about it and felt that it was reasonable. Although Lei Litian was slightly weaker than him, he was only a mid-stage god of creation, and the divine arrow that Zhuowen shot out was truly terrifying to the extreme. Even he couldn't block it, let alone Lei Litian. At the same time, In Wuxia cursed in his heart. If he had known that Lei Litian was killed by Zhuowen, he would rather die than assassinate Zhuowen. Now, he had ended up like this and had become Zhuowen's slave. His life was not even guaranteed. Thinking of this, In Wuxia coldly glared at Lei Zixuan. Clearly, he put most of the blame on Lei Zixuan. Lei Zixuan was dazed. When Lei Litian's life mark disappeared, she already knew that Lei Litian might have died. However, she trusted Lei Litian too much. She felt that Lei Litian shouldn't have died, so she didn't believe it. Now that Zhuowen had personally admitted it, the last trace of hope in Lei Zixuan's heart was also destroyed. She was very clear that after losing Lei Litian, the Thunder God Park was already a Dao Palace level force that only looked impressive. "You're going to destroy the Thunder God Park, right?" Lei Zixuan was dazed as she looked at Zhuowen and said self-mockingly, "No, I'm going to reorganize the Thunder God Park. Also, I'm going to reorganize the Huangji family. I'm going to combine these two Dao palaces together," Zhuowen said indifferently. Lei Zixuan and In Wuxia were both shocked. They didn't expect Zhuowen to be so bold as to forcefully reorganize two Dao palaces. Although the highest leaders of the Thunder God Park and the Huangji family were killed, Lei Litian and Huang Wu's prestige still existed. If Zhuowen went to reorganize them alone, it would be impossible for the cultivators of the Thunder God Park and the Huangji family to accept him. "Master, regardless of whether it is the Thunder God Garden or the Huangji clan, they are both Dao Palace-level factions that have developed for countless years. Their foundations are deeply rooted. Even if their leaders have been killed by you, it is basically impossible for you to rely on this to subdue them. Moreover, these two Dao palaces have many Dao palaces under their control. When the time comes, it'll be very easy for a huge upheaval to occur. It'll be very difficult for you to suppress it alone." In Wuxia was deeply worried as he raised his worries. Zhuowen waved his hand, indicating that In Wuxia didn't need to worry. He would deal with this matter. Soon, Zhuowen's group arrived at the Thunder God Park. Zhuowen also sent a message to Tong Chimei, asking them to return to the Thunder God Park. In the past few days, Lei Zixuan's soul imprint had been forcefully subdued by Zhuowen. Her life and death were in the hands of Zhuowen. Therefore, she obeyed Zhuan's every word. He didn't directly kill Lei Zishuan. Instead, he asked her to stay. After all, Lei Zishuan was the great senior sister of the Thunder God Park. If she was around, it would be much more convenient to reorganize the Thunder God Park. Great senior sister. When Zhuan's group of 3 entered the Thunder God Park, many cultivators cupped their hands and bowed to Lei Zishuan. It could be seen that Lei Zishuan had quite a bit of prestige in the Thunder God Park. However, there were also many cultivators who looked at Zhuan and Yin Wuxia in front of Lei Zishuan with astonishment. This was because from Lei Zishuan's position, it could be seen that Lei Zishuan seemed to be very afraid of this person and faintly felt inferior to him. However, they didn't have too many suspicions. They only thought that Lei Zishuan had brought an important guest with an extraordinary status. When Lei Zishuan brought Zhuan to the highest point of the Thunder God Park, the Thunder God Heavenly Platform, many cultivators in the Thunder God Park became restless. They felt that something was wrong. The Thunder God Heavenly Platform was the most sacred place in the Thunder God Park. Below the platform was an incomparably huge plaza. Usually, only the Thunder God Park's master, Lei Li, had the qualifications to ascend the Thunder God Heavenly Platform. Moreover, once one ascended the platform, it basically meant that something major had happened. But now, Lei Zishuan actually brought 2 unfamiliar cultivators up the Thunder God Heavenly Platform. Was she crazy? Many cultivators of the Thunder God Park gathered around the plaza. Among them, there was no lack of experts of the Thunder God Park. They all looked at Zhuan's group of 3 with unfriendly gazes. Great senior sister, what is the meaning of this? Only the Thunder God Park's master has the qualifications to ascend the Thunder God Heavenly Platform. Why are you going up there? Moreover, you brought 2 unfamiliar cultivators. Chapter 28:45. Lei Fu said, the young cultivator's words were like a fuse that ignited a bomb. The surrounding crowd immediately went into an uproar, and discussions filled the entire plaza like a wave. Everyone was puzzled as to why Lei Zishuan would do such a thing. On the Thunder God rooftop, Lei Zishuan smiled bitterly as she looked at Zhuan in awe. She hesitated for a moment, then stood on the rooftop and said, everyone, the reason why I'm here is because I have 2 extremely important things to announce. The moment Lei Zishuan said this, the plaza immediately quieted down. Although Lei Zishuan's cultivation wasn't high in the Thunder God Garden, her status wasn't low, especially among the younger generation of cultivators. Moreover, she was young, but her talent was very high. She was highly valued by Lei Litian, and even some of the higher-ups of the older generation would give Lei Zishuan some face. Now, that Lei Zishuan was going to announce something important, although it was still inappropriate to stand on the Thunder God rooftop, no one continued to make a ruckus. They wanted to hear what the important thing was. Our pavilion master has fallen. Lei Zishuan let out a long sigh and announced Lei Litian's death. The plaza fell into silence at first, but soon after, it was filled with an uproar that could topple mountains and overturn seas. The pavilion master has fallen? How is that possible? In the host region, other than the 5 Dao palaces and the mysterious blood prison, which other force could have an expert who could kill our pavilion master? But soon, the noisy plaza suddenly quieted down, and an old man slowly walked out from the crowd. This old man had a hunchback and walked over step by step like a candle in the wind. From the outside, this was an old man who was about to enter his coffin. However, the appearance of this old man caused the plaza that was about to go out of control to completely quiet down. Elder Lei, you actually came out of seclusion? Lei Zishuan looked at the old man who walked out from the crowd. Her beautiful eyes revealed a trace of surprise, but quickly dimmed. Zhuan's eyes revealed a look of surprise. Although this old man looked haggard and decayed, his unremarkable body faintly emitted a heart-palpitating fluctuation. Zhuan was no stranger to this fluctuation. It was the sign of someone who had reached the 3rd step of Dao confirmation. Oh, it's actually Lei Fu Dao. I always thought that this old fellow was dead. I didn't expect him to still be alive. In the end, he even stepped into the third step of Tao confirmation. Yin Wuxia made a soft sound of surprise. His gaze fell on the old man in the square, and he seemed very surprised. Zhuowen naturally did not know the identity of this old man, but Yin Wuxia had secretly introduced him to him, so he had some understanding of him. Lei Fudao was the previous court master of the Lightning God Park, but his talent was far inferior to the current Lei Litian. He had been in the position for many years, but his cultivation had always been stuck at the half-step Genesis stage. Later on, Lei Litian defied the heavens and smoothly became a creator lord. Lei Fudao abdicated and passed the position of court lord to Lei Litian. As for Lei Fudao, he was in seclusion and never appeared. Because it was too long ago, the cultivators in Lightning God Park and the outside world all subconsciously thought that Lei Fudao might have fallen. However, they did not expect Lei Fudao to appear in Lightning God Park again, and as a creator lord at that. Master, this old man is nothing to be afraid of. He's just an early-stage creator lord, Yin Wuxia whispered to Zhuowen. The many cultivators in the square also became friendly. They also felt the powerful aura on Lei Fudao's body, and they knew that Lei Fudao had successfully advanced to the Genesis stage. The people who had fallen into panic because of Lei Litian's death also calmed down a lot. They knew that as long as their Lightning God Park still had the support of a creator lord, their Lightning God Park would be able to stand tall. Lei Fudao stood upright. His slightly turbid eyes fell on Yin Wuxia, who was beside Zhuowen. He was first stunned, then a look of shock appeared on his face. After that, everyone noticed to their surprise that Lei Fudao bowed respectfully to Yin Wuxia and said, "Could it be that you're the 10 Extremes Yin Corpse Sect's Elder Yin Wuxia?" "He's from the 10 Extremes Yin Corpse Sect?" Everyone in the square was in an uproar. They somewhat understood why Lei Zixuan wanted to bring these two people to the Lightning God Sky platform. The 10 Extremes Yin Corpse Sect was one of the 5 Tao palaces, and its status was extremely high. Yin Wuxia was also an elder of the 10 Extremes Yin Corpse Sect, so his status was naturally higher than the Lightning God Park's master. There was naturally no problem for him to ascend the Lightning God Sky platform. As for Zhuowen, he was subconsciously ignored by everyone. The main reason was that Zhuowen was too young. In their opinion, this white-robed youth should be one of Yin Wuxia's juniors or subordinates. "That's me." Yin Wuxia cupped his hands casually. Lei Fudao's strength and status were below his, so he naturally did not need to pay too much attention to him. "Elder Yin, please excuse us for not going out to welcome you. It's just that the Thunder God Heavenly Platform isn't a place to receive guests. Elder Yin, why don't you come down and follow me to the guest hall?" Lei Fu chuckled. Elder Yin snorted and said coldly, "This old man has come here for an important matter. I'm not here to receive guests." "What's the matter?" Lei Fudao's heart skipped a beat as he felt that something was amiss. "Lei Zixuan will tell you later. It's not appropriate for you to ask me." Elder Yin did not say anything else, but stood silently beside Zhuowen. Lei Fudao looked at Zhuowen with some astonishment. From his point of view, it seemed that Yin Wuxia valued the white-robed youth beside him very much, and faintly felt that he was inferior to the white-robed youth. Lei Fudao thought of an unbelievable possibility, but he quickly shook his head and rejected it. He felt that the idea he had just come up with was too unrealistic. "Zixuan, you said that Li Tian has fallen. Do you have evidence?" Lei Fudao turned to look at Lei Zixuan and asked with a grave expression. Lei Zixuan took out a jade pendant that was covered in cracks and said, "This jade pendant contains the life imprint of the court master. Now that it has shattered, it means that the court master's life has already passed away." Lei Fudao waved his right hand and took the jade pendant from Lei Zixuan's hand. After carefully examining it, he finally sighed and said, "Li Tian has indeed fallen." Everyone sighed, but at the same time, there was even more anger and confusion. Who had killed their court master in the host region? Could it really be a force on the level of the 5 Tao palaces? "Zixuan, do you know who killed Li Tian?" Lei Fudao's expression was unsightly, and there was a trace of anger in his voice as he began to question Lei Zishuan. Lei Letian was the disciple that Lei Fudao was most proud of. To be able to smoothly reach the third step of Tao and become a late-stage god of creation in tens of thousands of years, it could be said that Lei Letian's talent was extremely terrifying. If Lei Letian had more time, it would not be impossible for him to lead the lightning god's court to an even higher peak. Lei Zishuan glanced at Zhuowen and hesitated for a moment before saying, "I'm actually not too sure, but I found this at the scene where the court master died." Chapter 2846. The position of the court master blood prisons assassins. Lei Fudao's eyes were filled with anger as he asked in confusion, "Our Thunder God's court has never provoked the blood prison before. Why would the blood prison send assassins to kill Lei Letian?" "I don't know either. Perhaps the Lei Garden Master offended someone back then, so that person might have bribed the blood prison to assassinate the Garden Master." Lei Zishuan said, "The blood prison is too despicable. They actually tried to assassinate our Garden Master for no reason. This hatred, our Thunder God's court will not live under the same sky as them. Yes, that blood prison is too arrogant. Perhaps our Thunder God's court cannot compare to that blood prison, but we are not someone he can bully at will." Everyone in the square was enraged, revealing their anger. Lei Fudao gestured towards the plaza with his hand, causing the plaza to quiet down. He looked at Lei Zishuan and said, "Zishuan, don't you have two important things to announce? What is the other thing?" Lei Zishuan hesitated for a moment, then said in a deep voice, "Before Lei Garden Master died, he had already appointed me as the new master of Thunder God's court." After saying that, Lei Zishuan's words were immediately drowned out by the uproar in the plaza. The position of the Garden Master is too childish. Although Great Senior Sister's talent is very good, her cultivation is still shallow. It is not appropriate for her to succeed the position of the Garden Master now. I also feel that Great Senior Sister is too young. If a few thousand years later, I have no objections to Great Senior Sister succeeding the position of the Garden Master." Lei Zishuan's face was a little ugly. She did not expect that after the announcement of her succeeding the position of the Garden Master, there would be so many objections. Of course, this was not something that Lei Zishuan was willing to do, but something that Zhuowen had asked her to do. Right now, Lei Zishuan was Zhuowen's servant, and her life and death were all in Zhuowen's hands. If Lei Zishuan became the master of Thunder God's court, it would mean that Zhuowen had taken control of the entire Thunder God's court. It was just that Lei Zishuan was in the light while Zhuowen was in the dark. However, what Zhuowen did not expect was that Lei Fudao would actually appear in Thunder God's court. If it wasn't for Lei Fudao, with Lei Zishuan's prestige, it wouldn't be too difficult for her to become the Lightning God's Garden Master. But now that Lei Fudao had appeared, it was a huge obstacle for Lei Zishuan to succeed the position of Yuan Master. After all, Lei Fudao was the previous court master. Now that he had come out of seclusion, he had successfully validated the third step of the Tao. In the Lightning God Garden, there was no one more qualified than Lei Fudao to succeed the position of Lightning God Garden Master. Lei Fu chuckled and gestured for everyone to quiet down. He smiled at Lei Zishuan and said, "Zishuan, both Li Tian and I have seen your talent. In my opinion, your talent is even stronger than Li Tian's. But you also know that your experience is still shallow, and your cultivation is not high. If you succeed the position of the court master now, I'm afraid it will be difficult to convince the masses. How about this? I'll temporarily take over the position of court master. When you reach the third step of Tao validation, I'll abdicate my position." Lei Fudao's tone was very calm, and it was unanimously approved by everyone in the square. Lei Zishuan frowned slightly and glanced at Zhuowen. Obviously, she wanted Zhuowen to make the decision. "Senior Lei, you may have misunderstood. Before Lightning God Garden Master died, he had already made a will for Miss Lei to succeed the position of the court master. Miss Lei's experience is indeed not high, but there is no need to give the position to you. If Senior Lei is really thinking for the sake of the Lightning God Garden, then he should support Miss Lei to succeed the position. You only need to assist from the side. Zhuowen stepped forward at this moment. His eyes were cold, and his voice was clear and melodious, spreading throughout the square. Zhuowen was very clear about what Lei Fudao was planning. If he really gave the position of the court master to Lei Fudao, he was afraid that Lei Fudao would not give up his position in the future. Moreover, even if Lei Fudao would give up his position, Lei Fudao was not Zhuowen's subordinate. Letting Lei Fudao succeed the position would not benefit Zhuowen at all. Lei Fudao frowned slightly and looked at Zhuowen with some displeasure. He felt that this kid was meddling in other people's business. Who do you think you are? You are not a member of the Lightning God Garden. Why do you have to say such things? Senior Lei is the previous courtmaster. Now that he has come out of seclusion, he has advanced to the creator stage. He deserves to succeed the position of courtmaster. Moreover, didn't Senior Lei say that? As long as eldest senior sister advances to the creator stage in the future, she will naturally give up her position again. Don't you understand? In the square, a young cultivator suddenly pointed at Zhuowen and berated him. His eyes were full of disdain. Zhuowen was stunned. Then, he grinned at that young cultivator, revealing a row of white teeth. When everyone saw Zhuowen smile, they inexplicably felt a chill run down their spines. That young cultivator also felt a chill run down his spine and subconsciously retreated. However, he soon felt a powerful force enveloping his body and pulling him over. He involuntarily appeared on the rooftop, and his neck was already in the palm of the white-robed young man's right hand. Everyone in the square was in an uproar. Then they revealed angry expressions. Clearly, Zhuowen's actions had completely infuriated them. There were even some impulsive cultivators who directly attacked Zhuowen on the rooftop. Zhuowen waved his sleeves and took out array flags. He set up a powerful eternal-level defensive array around him and easily blocked the attacks from the square. An eternal-level divine array master? Lei Fudao was a little surprised. He was a little surprised that Zhuowen could cultivate the array Dao to such a level at such a young age. It was really not simple. Young man, aren't you being too presumptuous? This is the territory of the Thunder God Garden. You can't act presumptuously here. Lei Fudao's eyes were gloomy. He took a step forward and blasted his right palm toward Zhuowen's head. Lei Fudao used all of his strength. A golden light rose up like a blazing sun and transformed into an incomparably huge golden palm. He intended to kill Zhuo in one move. Crack. After all, Lei Fudao was an early-stage creator. The eternal-level array that Zhuowen had set up temporarily was useless in front of Lei Fudao's attack. Zhuowen stood motionless. His eyes were as calm as water. He didn't care about Lei Fudao's full-strength attack at all. However, when Lei Fudao's attack was about to land on Zhuowen, an even more terrifying force blasted over and instantly disintegrated Lei Fudao's attack. Lei Fudao's face changed drastically. The moment his attack was disintegrated, he retreated. However, the force was too fast and terrifying. It landed on his right cheek as if he had foreseen it. It was a skinny palm that gave Lei Fudao a hard slap in the face. Lei Fudao screamed and fell to the ground. He spat out blood mixed with broken teeth. His body twitched and he couldn't get up. He was seriously injured by this slap. Chapter 28:47. Immortal masters cannot be humiliated no matter what. Lei Fudao was still an early-stage god of creation, yet he had been knocked to the ground with a single slap. This was far too humiliating. Lei Fudao struggled to get up and looked at Yin Wuxia, who had suddenly appeared in front of Zhuowen, with fear in his eyes. He didn't understand. After all, Yin Wuxia was an elder of the Ten Extremities Yin Corpse sect. However, their Lightning God Garden was a powerful Dao palace, so Yin Wuxia should at least give them some face. Unfortunately, Yin Wuxia had decisively attacked him for a junior, knocking him to the ground and seriously injuring him. Elder Yin, what do you mean by this? Lei Fudao asked in confusion. Elder Lei, do you know the identity of the person you're about to attack? If you really injure him, I'm afraid even your life won't be worth it, Yin Wuxia said with a cold gaze. Lei Fudao was stunned. He finally started to take Zhuowen seriously. For Yin Wuxia to be so cautious, this person's identity was definitely not simple. Who is he? Lei Fudao asked with some reluctance. Lady Lei, tell him who I am. Also, do I have the right to say anything? Zhuowen's right hand was still holding the young cultivator's neck. His gaze was cold and emotionless as he spoke to the stunned Lei Zixuan. Lei Zixuan came back to her senses and hurriedly said, Elder Lei, this person is called Zhuowen. He has another title, which is the 5th Immortal Master of the Pill Array Immortal Alliance. Lei Fudao was stunned. He naturally knew about the Immortal Masters of the Pill Array Immortal Alliance. The Pill Array Immortal Alliance was simply too famous in the host region. It was a colossus that could be compared to the 5 Dao Palaces. Immortal Masters were the highest level existences in the Pill Array Immortal Alliance, second only to the Alliance Master. There were only 4 Immortal Masters in the entire Pill Array Immortal Alliance. Including the new Immortal Master Zhuowen, there were only 5. In terms of fame and status, the Immortal Masters of the Pill Array Immortal Alliance were much higher than Yin Wuxia in the 10 Extremities Yin Corps sect. This old man has eyes but failed to recognize Mount Tai. I didn't know Master Immortal's identity and offended you just now. I hope Master Immortal can forgive me. Lei Fudao's face was thick enough. After knowing Immortal Master Zhuowen's status, his attitude immediately changed 180 degrees. Although his body was still in a state of serious injury, Lei Fudao still forced himself to get up and bowed to Zhuowen. Lei Fu didn't doubt Zhuowen's identity. After all, it was Yin Wuxia who said it himself. Yin Wuxia was an elder of the 10 Extreme Yin Corps sect, and his strength was much stronger than Lei Fudao's. How could he deceive him? As for the young cultivator whose neck was being grabbed by Zhuowen, he was trembling in fear. He regretted offending Zhuowen just now. If he knew that Zhuowen was an immortal master of the Pill Array Immortal Alliance, he wouldn't have spoken so carelessly. Immortal Master, please spare my life. I didn't mean to offend you just now. I hope Immortal Master can forgive me this time. The young cultivator quickly begged for mercy. Immortal Masters can't be insulted. You should pay the price for speaking rudely. Zhuowen put down the young cultivator and looked at him indifferently. The young cultivator's face was pale, but he was a decisive person. He gritted his teeth and broke his right arm, then kowtowed 3 times to Zhuowen. Leave. Zhuowen waved his hand and didn't pursue the matter. He knew that this young cultivator was most likely instigated by Lei Fudao. If he didn't have the identity of an immortal master, all the cultivators in the square would have been instigated by this young cultivator, and it would have caused chaos. The young cultivator was deeply grateful and quickly left the rooftop. He didn't want to stay for a moment longer. Miss Lei is my friend. She did receive the will of Court Lord Lei Li and is worthy of being the next court lord. Zhuowen stood on the rooftop and looked around. His clear voice sounded again. At this moment, the voices of opposition in the plaza dwindled significantly. They all knew Celestial Master Zhuowen's identity, and he also had the protection of a late-stage god of creation like Yin Wuxia. Thus, no one dared to voice their objections. As Miss Lei's friend, if Miss Lei can become the court lord, I will definitely refine a promotion pill of the corresponding grade for everyone. All of them will be special grade pills. Zhuowen spoke again, but this time, the entire square was in an uproar. There weren't many special grade promotion pills, even in the Thunder God Garden. These so-called promotion pills were used by Dao confirming cultivators to break through to the next level. For example, the Heaven's Fate pill was a divine pill that cultivators needed to break through from Chaos Origin Lord to Heaven's Fate Lord. The divine pills that were of a higher grade than the Heaven's Fate pill were the Profound pill and the Eternal pill. At present, Zhuowen could only refine special-grade eternal pills. As for the higher-grade Genesis pill, there was still a gap. However, Zhuowen's success rate was simply too terrifying. Moreover, the quality of the divine pills he refined were basically all special-grade. This was Zhuowen's advantage and also his secret to being able to refine a large number of divine pills. We support eldest senior sister to become the court lord. Upon hearing the benefits of special-grade promotion pills, many cultivators on the square set aside their moral integrity and began to support Lei Zixuan. They couldn't wait for Lei Zixuan to become the court lord immediately. Zhuowen also did not expect that the method of gifting advancement divine pills would be so effective. What Zhuowen didn't know was that in every force, only a small number of disciples at the top of the pyramid could obtain cultivation resources. Most of the disciples were extremely short on cultivation resources. Even a big force like Thunder God Garden didn't have many alchemists. Moreover, they had to provide for them. The number of times they could refine pills was also limited, and the success rate was also very low. Although Thunder God Garden had a corresponding reserve of promotion pills, there weren't many of them. Naturally, they would give priority to the talented and powerful disciples. As for most of the disciples with mediocre talent, it would be difficult for them to obtain promotion pills. Now, Zhuowen's promise was undoubtedly a timely help for most of the disciples of Thunder God Garden. After all, most of the disciples didn't care about who would become the court lord as long as it wasn't a mediocre person. It wouldn't change their cultivation too much. However, this promise of Zhuowen's was related to their own interests. These disciples naturally flocked like ducks and turned to support Lei Zixuan. Lei Fu's face turned ugly. He sighed softly and knew that it was impossible for him to compete for the court lord's position. Whether it was Zhuowen or Yin Wuxia, both of them had a higher status than him. Since both of them supported Lei Zixuan, he had no chance to compete with Lei Zixuan for the court lord's position. Congratulations, Zixuan. After you become the court lord, I hope that you can work hard in your cultivation and strive to reach the third step of the Tao. You can bring glory to Thunder God Garden. Lei Fu cupped his hands and congratulated Lei Zixuan, who was on the rooftop. Lei Zixuan cupped her hands and returned the greeting. The stone in her heart was finally put down. What she was most afraid of was that she couldn't become the court lord. This also meant that she was useless to Zhuowen. Chapter 2848. 10 Extremities Incorp's sect. In the following period of time, the Thunder God Park held a grand succession ceremony, and Lei Zixuan became the rightful owner of the Thunder God Park. In order to fulfill his promise, Zhuowen did not personally refine the promotion God pill. Instead, he contacted Huan Taiping of the Pill Array Immortal Alliance, hoping to exchange resources of equivalent value for the corresponding promotion God pill. The Pill Array Immortal Alliance had a large number of Pill Array masters in the host region, and the amount of God pills they had was extremely terrifying. There were many disciples in the Thunder God Park, and if Zhuowen wanted to refine the promotion God pill alone, it would take a lot of time. Therefore, other than the Eternal Pill, the rest of the God pills could be exchanged from the Pill Array Immortal Alliance. Huan Taiping agreed without any hesitation. Zhuowen was not surprised. After all, he was an immortal master of the Pill Array Immortal Alliance, and his status was high. Exchanging a large amount of God pills was within the permitted range. After doing all this, Zhuowen gave Lei Zixuan some instructions. Then he left with Yin Wuxia and headed towards the Huang-Ji aristocratic family. Zhuowen's process of subduing the Huang-Ji aristocratic family was much simpler than the Thunder God Park. He was an immortal master of the Pill Array Immortal Alliance, so he easily subdued all the pill masters of the Huang-Ji aristocratic family and controlled the Huang-Ji aristocratic family source of God pills. At the same time, Yin Wuxia used his status as an elder of the 10 Extremities Incorp sect to completely suppress the upper echelons of the Huang-Ji aristocratic family and firmly controlled them in his hands. Zhuowen summoned the upper echelons of the Ryuka from the outside world and slowly began to control the Huang-Ji aristocratic family. The current Ryuka was mainly led by Lu Han-tian and Long Xiaotian, and Lu Han-tian and Long Xiaotian's cultivation speed was extremely fast, and they had both become heaven's will masters. Originally, with Lu Han-tian and Long Xiaotian's cultivations, it was impossible for them to control such a large force like the Huang-Ji aristocratic family. Fortunately, Yin Wuxia had many tricks up his sleeves. He himself had a half-step Genesis Lord Chief Corpse, and Zhuowen suppressed it in the Huang-Ji aristocratic family to assist Lu Han-tian and Long Xiaotian. Zhuowen took out a lot of resources and gave them to Lu Han-tian and Long Xiaotian to distribute them as soon as possible. Of Dragon Clan's ancestral Dragon families territory, Dragon, and Dragon 9, the Dragon 9 Immortal Alliance, Dragon sect was Dragon sect. After doing all this, Zhuowen was still not at ease. Hence, he set up many formations and restrictions in the core area where the Long family's upper echelons were. These formations included defensive formations, offensive formations, trap and kill formations, and so on. They included most of the formations. These array formations were basically Pinnacle Eternal Grade Grand Arrays. With so many Pinnacle Eternal Grade Grand Arrays stacked together, the power of this Grand Array formation had far exceeded the scope of an Eternal Grade Grand Array formation. Its power was close to that of a Genesis Grade Grand Array formation. Zhuowen had spent several months of painstaking effort to set up these large formations before finally completing them. The power of these formations was extremely terrifying. Even God of Creation initial stage cultivators wouldn't be able to break through this formation. As for God of Creation late stage cultivators like Yin Wuxia, it was hard to say. However, Zhuowen wasn't worried. The strongest Huang-Ji aristocratic family's Huang Wu was only an early stage Genesis Lord. Now that he had dealt with Huang Wu, no one in the Huang-Ji aristocratic family could threaten this immortal array. Just in case, Zhuowen gave the Universe Explosion Array that Ji Wuming had given him to Long Xiaotian. If anything happened to the Huang-Ji aristocratic family, he could use this Universe Explosion Array. After all, the Universe Explosion Array was a Genesis-level immortal array. Even if Yin Wuxia was trapped in it, he would be in a sorry state. After the Huang-Ji aristocratic family's matters were settled, Zhuowen set off for the 10 Extremities Yin Corpse sect. This time, the way for Zhuowen and Yin Wuxia to head to the 10 Ultimate Yin Corpse sect was much simpler. They could only use the ancient teleportation array of the Huangji family clan to teleport to a down mansion level force that was closest to the 10 Ultimate Yin Corpse sect. Zhuowen then flew directly from this Dao Palace to the 10 Extremities Yin Corpse sect's territory. One had to admit that the 10 Extremities Yin Corpse sect lived up to its name. The entire area was filled with an eerie atmosphere. The moment Zhuowen entered the 10 Extremities Yin Corpse sect's territory, he felt as if he had entered a mass grave. It gave him goosebumps. Master, we're almost at the entrance to the 10 Extremities Yin Corpse sect. Yin Wuxia secretly transmitted a message to Zhuowen while Zhuowen was sizing up the environment within the 10 Extremities Yin Corpse sect. Zhuowen looked ahead and indeed, he could vaguely see an entrance within the shroud of Yin Qi. The entrance was huge. When Zhuowen and Long Xiaotian approached, Zhuowen realized that the cliffs on both sides of the entrance were actually piles of white bones. Not only that, but the buildings that appeared vaguely at the entrance were all white. They were actually all piles of white bones. Zhuowen frowned slightly. Before entering the entrance, he had completely concealed his aura. At the same time, his face was distorted, and he turned into a haggard young man with messy hair. After changing his appearance, Zhuowen put away the space-time roulette and silently stood behind Yin Wuxia. According to Yin Wuxia's plan, Zhuowen's current identity was a disciple that Yin Wuxia had accidentally taken in from the outside world. He planned to send him back to the 10 Extremities Yin Corpse sect to be nurtured. Elder Yin. When Yin Wuxia and Zhuowen arrived at the entrance, The two guards at the entrance hurriedly prostrated themselves on the ground and bowed to Yin Wuxia. Zhuowen also noticed that the two guards were trembling all over, as if they were very afraid of Yin Wuxia. "Get up." Yin Wuxia's gaze was calm. After he finished speaking, he led Zhuowen into the depths of the entrance. After Yin Wuxia had left for a long time, the two guards at the entrance slowly stood up with lingering fear on their faces. "Looks like you're quite famous in the 10 Extremities Yin Corpse sect. Those two guards are very afraid of you." Zhuowen glanced at Yin Wuxia indifferently and said with some interest. Yin Wuxia's dignified expression had long since disappeared. He smiled at Zhuowen and said, "Master, you must be joking. After all, I'm an elder of the 10 Extremities Yin Corpse sect. With my fierce reputation, it's not surprising that ordinary disciples are afraid of me." Zhuowen did not mind. He said indifferently, "Tell me about the 10 Extremities Yin Corpse sect." Yin Wuxia did not dare to be negligent. He explained in detail the distribution of the 10 Extremities Yin Corpse sect, as well as some of the powerhouses to pay attention to. According to Yin Wuxia, there were 10 elders in the 10 Extremities Yin Corpse sect. Each elder was a powerhouse in the third step of the doctrine realm. Yin Wuxia was also one of the 10 elders. However, in terms of strength and reputation, Yin Wuxia was only ranked 9th. Zhuowen was a little surprised. Yin Wuxia was a late-stage creator. If he was only ranked 9th among the 10 elders, didn't that mean that there were 8 elders in the 10 Extremities Yin Corpse sect who were stronger than late-stage creators? Looks like the 10 Extremities Yin Corpse sect is indeed a Dao Palace faction. They actually have so many third-step Dao validation powerhouses. Chapter 2849. News from Sakyamuni. According to Yin Wuxia, the sect master of the 10 Extremities Yin Corpse sect was called Senki Yin. His strength was unfathomable, and it was said that he had been a peak lord of creation tens of thousands of years ago. Now, tens of thousands of years had passed, and Senki Yin had spent most of his time cultivating in seclusion. Yin Wuxia guessed that Senki Yin had most likely advanced to the master of heaven-piercing realm. Zhuowen narrowed his eyes, and his heart was filled with shock. The master of heaven-piercing realm was the final stage of the third step of the Dao confirming realm, and it was also the stage closest to the heaven-crushing realm. In the Xian-Mi heavenly domain, those who could reach the master of heaven-piercing realm were all peerless powerhouses with extraordinary means. They were the true bigwigs of the Xian-Mi heavenly domain. By the way, Elder Yin, does your 10 Extremities Yin Corpse sect have an elder called Ba Jingwei? Zhuowen suddenly asked. Ba Jingwei was one of the 5 lords of creation who had hunted down Yu Xian. Although Ba Jingwei had been injured by Yu Xian's final counterattack, he had not died. You know Elder Ba? Yin Wuxia asked in surprise. I don't know him. I just heard about him from others. Zhuowen shook his head. Yin Wuxia nodded slightly and said, Elder Ba is the 4th elder. His status in the 10 Extremities Yin Corpse sect is much higher than mine, and he is also very strong. However, I heard that he was severely injured a long time ago after joining forces to attack someone. He even alarmed the sect master, and his strength was reduced by a portion. Zhuowen's eyes flashed, and he continued to ask, Do you know how strong Ba Jingwei is now? Yin Wuxia thought for a moment and said, When Elder Ba was at his peak, his cultivation should have been at the mid-stage of the Lord of Creation realm. Later on, he suffered very serious injuries, and his cultivation dropped. He should only be at the early stage of the Lord of Creation realm. Zhuowen's heart trembled. Ba Jingwei was truly terrifying. Even after suffering the backlash of Yu Xian's death, his cultivation had only dropped by a small stage. Zhuowen's heart was heavy. Whether it was his original body or his avatar, they were far from being a match for Ba Jingwei. Even if he used the Ho-I Divine Bow and Ho-I Divine Arrows, he might not be able to kill Ba Jingwei. However, Zhuowen was not in a hurry. The 1,000-year poison would only take effect after 1,000 years. In 1,000 years, Zhuowen was confident that his strength would surpass Ba Jingwei's. At that time, it wouldn't be difficult for him to help you and get rid of those murderers. That's right. Master, there's one more thing I need to tell you. Previously, one of the geniuses from our 10 extremities, Corpse sect wanted your life. He even asked me to kill you on his behalf, Wuxia suddenly said. Zhuowen was stunned and asked subconsciously, who is it? That person is called Sakyamuni. He's the fourth elder, Ba Jingwei's last disciple. He's deeply appreciated by Ba Jingwei, and the sect master has also paid attention to him. Now, his status in the sect is very high. As soon as Wuxia finished speaking, he noticed that Zhuowen's expression was strange. He subconsciously said, Master, did I say something wrong? No, you didn't say anything wrong. The person you mentioned is called Sakyamuni. Where did you find him? Zhuowen asked solemnly. Although Wuxia was a little surprised by Zhuowen's reaction, he still answered honestly. I heard that Ba Jingwei accidentally found him in a small faction called Bai Hong Hall. He was shocked and took the naughty Shiva back as his last disciple. Speaking of which, Sakyamuni is indeed extremely extraordinary. Supposedly, his ancestral Tao root is at the heaven rank, and his cultivation speed is extremely fast. He's only been in the sect for a few hundred years, yet he's actually stepped into the second step of Tao validation, the Lord of Profundity. Supposedly, he's charging into the eternal Overlord realm. Moreover, his combat strength is extremely extraordinary. At that time, he was merely the Heaven's Mandate Lord, yet he was able to fight an eternal Overlord. Although he lost, he made the eternal Overlord pay a corresponding price. After he advanced into the Lord of Profundity, the eternal Overlord realm expert was no match for him at all. Only the half-step Genesis overlords could go against him. When he spoke up to hear, Wuxia couldn't help but sigh with admiration. Sakyamuni's natural talent was monstrous indeed. Wuxia knew that so long as Sakyamuni was given enough time, he would be completely capable of reaching the third step of Tao validation. Moreover, Sakyamuni had a heaven-rank ancestral Tao root, and he'd attracted the attention of the sect master. His future was limitless. Zhuowen's expression was slightly unsightly. He was sure that the Sakyamuni Wuxia spoke of was Sakyamuni from the eight heavens. He remembered that Sakyamuni had been taken away by Sun Qi. And wasn't Sun Qi a cultivator from the White Rainbow Hall? However, Zhuowen hadn't expected that he'd clearly chopped off Sakyamuni's head and annihilated his soul. Logically speaking, the Nadi Shiva should have died without a doubt. However, not only had the Nadi Shiva survived, but he'd even joined the 10 Extremes Corpse sect. What was even more inconceivable to Zhuowen was that Sakyamuni's ancestral Tao root had actually become a heaven-rank ancestral Tao root. If he wasn't wrong, Sun Qi had tested Sakyamuni's ancestral Tao root when he was in the eight heavens. Even though Sakyamuni's ancestral Tao root wasn't bad, it was only an earth-rank ancestral Tao root. Yet now, it had actually become a heaven-rank ancestral Tao root. Could it be that Sakyamuni's ancestral Tao root can evolve? When he thought up to here, Zhuowen's heart felt extremely heavy. He felt that the Nadi Shiva definitely possessed some sort of great secret. Otherwise, it was impossible for him to survive and evolve his ancestral Tao root. Wuxia noticed that Zhuowen's expression changed indeterminately, and he asked probingly, Master, are you acquainted with the Nadi Shiva? We've met a few times, but we're not very familiar with each other. You don't have to worry about this matter. Help me arrange a position that can allow me to enter the Umbra Hell first. Zhuowen's expression was calm. Even though he was rather shocked by what had happened to Sakyamuni, he didn't really care about it. Sakyamuni definitely had some secrets, but Zhuowen's secrets were even greater. Moreover, the Pangu's sacred body that he cultivated was unprecedented and extremely powerful. He didn't want to bother about Sakyamuni right now. After all, his main objective for entering the Corpse sect this time was to obtain the underworld elusive flower. If he offended the Nadi Shiva and alerted the entire Corpse sect, then he would lose more than he gained. Moreover, Zhuowen believed that since Sakyamuni had lost him once, he had already subconsciously developed a shadow over him. No matter how quickly Sakyamana's strength increased, as long as he faced Zhuowen, there would always be a shadow in his heart. When that time came, the chances of him losing to Zhuowen again would only increase. After Yin Wuxie brought Zhuowen to his cave residence, he bid farewell to Zhuowen and left alone to help Zhuowen arrange the position in the Umbra Hell. Yin Wuxie's cave residence was extremely large. Even though it was decorated very luxuriously, it still couldn't conceal the gloomy atmosphere that was hidden within the cave residence. Zhuowen didn't mind and casually found a place to meditate and rest. After a while, there was a knock on the door of the cave residence. Zhuowen raised his eyebrows. He was a little surprised that Yin Wuxie was so efficient. He actually managed to get it done so quickly. Chapter 2850. The Gathering of Freaks. The moment the icy beauty saw Zhuowen, she was obviously stunned for a moment. Then, she asked vigilantly, "Who are you?" "Senior sister, please don't misunderstand. I'm Xiao Wan, Elder Yin's new disciple. After he brought me to the Immortal's Cave, he left because he had some matters to attend to and left me to rest in the Immortal's Cave." Zhuowen spoke in a natural and unrestrained manner. The iceberg beauty's expression softened as she said, "So you are Master's new disciple. No wonder I haven't seen you before. Where did Master go? Do you know?" Zhuowen shook his head. He really didn't know where Yin Wuxie went. He only knew that Yin Wuxie was helping him deal with the matters of the underworld. "He's not here." The iceberg beauty was somewhat anxious. Soon after, she looked at Zhuowen as if she had thought of something and said, "Junior brother Xiao Wan, can you let me into the cave for a moment?" "Senior sister, I really have an important matter that requires Master's personal handwriting." The iceberg beauty thought that Zhuowen would purposely refuse. She had even prepared all kinds of excuses. However, Zhuowen generously gave up his position, allowing this ice beauty to enter the cave. "Junior brother Wan, I really have to thank you this time. I'll take Master's letter. I'll send a message to Master about this." The iceberg beauty smiled and hurriedly entered the cave. She swiftly picked up a bamboo scroll from a desk and was about to leave in a hurry. "Senior sister, what do you want to do with Master's letter?" Zhuowen asked with a smile. "I'm going to take a look at the monstrous genius meeting. It said that our sect's eldest senior brother Gui Ling has gathered the other 4 monstrous geniuses of the sun-chasing temple, Falling Star Mountain, Void Palace, and Scarlet Mountain Villa to discuss the Tao together. This is a rare opportunity. I really want to see the 5 monstrous geniuses of our host region." The iceberg beauty was in a hurry. She casually explained to Zhuowen and left the cave. Zhuowen was deep in thought. He had heard of the 5 monstrous geniuses before. It was said that the 5 monstrous geniuses were the most powerful geniuses in the 5 Tao palaces. Every genius represented the strongest fighting force of the younger generation in their respective Tao Palace factions. In the host region, the 5 great geniuses were idols and targets of worship for many young cultivators. "I'll go take a look too." Zhuowen thought for a while and finally decided to follow the ice beauty to see the 5 monsters. Zhuowen himself was already monstrous enough. He also wanted to see how monstrous these so-called 5 monstrous geniuses were. Before he left, Zhuowen sent a message to Yin Wuxie, telling him to go take a look at the monster pageant. "Junior brother, why are you here?" The iceberg beauty couldn't help but ask when she saw the young man beside her. Her beautiful eyes were filled with surprise. "Senior sister, I've heard of the 5 monstrous geniuses for a long time. This time, the 5 of them are gathered together to discuss the Tao. I don't want to miss it. I just don't know if the letter in your hand can let us enter the venue." Zhuowen said with a smile. Of course. The iceberg beauty agreed without hesitation. After all, she had obtained the letter thanks to Zhuowen. After that, Zhuowen and the iceberg beauty chatted happily. He finally found out that the iceberg beauty's name was Qiu Linglong. She was Yin Wuxie's only female disciple. "Junior brother Xiao Wan, we're here. This is the place where the 5 monstrous geniuses are discussing the Tao. Without an elder's letter, ordinary disciples can't enter. Qiu Linglong pointed at a huge courtyard that had appeared in front of them. The courtyard was surrounded by extremely tall walls. Furthermore, there was a powerful spirit formation set up around the courtyard. At this moment, the courtyard was densely packed with cultivators. These cultivators were all looking at the courtyard, wanting to see the scenery inside. Unfortunately, the array restriction outside the courtyard covered the scene inside. This made many cultivators who were looking forward to it quite disappointed. Qiu Linglong brought Zhuan and squeezed into the crowd. However, just as Qiu Linglong was about to hand the letter to the guard at the entrance of the courtyard, an arm suddenly swept over and snatched the letter from Qiu Linglong's hand. Qiu Linglong was stunned. Her beautiful eyes stared at a male cultivator not far away and said angrily, "Shun Zipping, what are you doing? Why did you snatch my letter?" The male cultivator, called Shun Zipping, looked to be about 30 years old. He had a fierce face, and one could tell at a glance that he wasn't a good person. Shun Zipping patted the letter in his hand and looked at Qiu Linglong, whose eyes were almost spitting fire, and said jokingly, "Junior Sister Qiu, what are you talking about? When did I snatch your letter? This handwritten book is mine. Are you blind?" As soon as Shun Zipping's words came out, many people around him echoed. Obviously, these people should be Shun Zipping's people. Qiu Linglong was so angry that smoke was coming out of her 7 orifices. She stomped her jade-like foot and rushed towards Shun Zipping. Her right hand formed a palm and mercilessly attacked, wanting to snatch the letter in Shun Zipping's hand. Zhuan couldn't help but shake his head when he saw Qiu Linglong actually attacking impulsively. Qiu Linglong's cultivation wasn't high. She was only at the peak of Hunyuan Master, but Shun Zipping was a genuine master of destiny. Qiu Linglong pounced on Shun Zipping and fought him head-on. She was simply asking for trouble. Sure enough, Shun Zipping suddenly punched and pushed Qiu Linglong back until she stopped in front of Zhuan. Then, she spat out a mouthful of blood. "Junior brother Xiaowan, I'm really sorry. I actually failed to live up to the letter you gave me." Qiu Linglong's beautiful eyes were a little dim. She looked at Zhuan with an apologetic expression. "Senior sister, the letter is ours. Could it be that you intend to give it up just like that?" Zhuan suddenly spoke calmly. He walked slowly over to stand before Qiu Linglong, and he stared indifferently at Shun Zipping, who seemed complacent. Qiu Linglong's beautiful eyes shook. She hurriedly stopped Zhuan when she saw him standing before her. "Junior brother Xiaowan, forget it. You're master's new disciple, whereas Shun Zipping is a master of destiny. You're not a match for him." Shun Zipping was complacent now. He waved the letter in front of Qiu Linglong and said, "Junior Sister Qiu, thank you for the letter. Since you're so courteous, then I'll accept it." As he spoke, Shun Zipping waved the letter in his hand, and then he looked at Zhuan and said coldly, "Who do you think you are? You seem to be very unconvinced. Could it be that you intend to seize this letter from me?" Shun Zipping was only teasing Chun Shi because the aura of this unfamiliar young man before him was extremely restrained and much weaker than him. So, he didn't feel that this young man would dare to make a move against him. Chapter 28:51. A strong slap to the face. Shun Zipping was stunned by Zhuan's words. He looked at Zhuan and said, "What did you just say? You said you would attack me, and you said I would regret it?" At this point, Shun Zipping laughed. His laughter was filled with mockery. Many of the disciples behind Shun Zipping also burst into laughter. Zhuan was definitely a new face to them. Many cultivators guessed that he should be a new disciple of the 10 Extremes Encorp sect. Moreover, Zhuan's aura was restrained and did not look strong. He probably had not even crossed the threshold of Dao validation. Everyone subconsciously thought that he was bragging. Who recruited this kid? He's so arrogant. He actually dares to threaten senior brother Shun Zipping. Isn't he courting death? Newborn calves are really not afraid of tigers. When senior brother Shun Zipping attacks, I'm afraid this kid will cry for his parents. The number of disciples in the 10 Extremes Encorp sect was extremely terrifying, so there were still many disciples outside the courtyard. These disciples were basically not qualified to enter the courtyard. Firstly, they had no background, and secondly, they were not talented enough. Among the many disciples of the 10 Extremes Corp sect, they could only be considered to be in the lower middle class. Therefore, among this group of disciples, Shun Zipping was considered to be one of the stronger ones. He was also the temporary leader of this group of cultivators. Zhuowen's gaze was calm, and his expression was calm. The mockery around him did not affect him at all. Qiu Linglong, on the other hand, was anxious. Her beautiful eyes flickered, and she kept winking at Zhuowen, telling him to stop talking. Zhuowen gave Qiu Linglong a reassuring look, which made Qiu Linglong even more anxious. However, there was nothing she could do. After all, she and Zhuowen had only met once. There were some things that she could not say out loud. I say, little brother, I see that you're new here. You probably don't know who I am. I'm Shun Zipping. Shun Zipping laughed mockingly. Halfway through his words, he was immediately interrupted by Zhuowen. I know your name is Shun Zipping, but what does that have to do with me? I was the one who brought this book here. You snatched it away, so it's your fault. Now that I'm taking it back, is there anything wrong with that? Do I need to listen to you blabbering in front of me? Zhuowen's words were very impolite. Shun Zipping's face suddenly became gloomy, and a trace of anger flashed in his eyes. He felt that this Zhuowen was really unreasonable. In the world of cultivators, the strong prey on the weak. This is even more true in the Corp sect. The weak will never have the right to make their own decisions and will always serve the strong. If you have the strength, then come and ask me for the letter. If you don't, then scram. Otherwise, don't blame me for being merciless. Shun Zipping looked at Zhuowen arrogantly, not concealing the disdain in his eyes. You're right, the weak prey on the strong. This is the law of cultivators. Since the Corp sect is the same, then I won't hold back. After saying that, Zhuowen turned to look at Qiu Linglong and asked, Senior Qiu, as long as you don't kill him, it shouldn't be a problem to cripple him. After all, there are always casualties in a fight. Qiu Linglong didn't even react. She was shocked. She didn't expect Zhuowen to actually want to provoke Shun Zipping. As long as you don't die, anything is fine. Junior brother, don't worry, I won't beat you to death. I will break all the bones in your body and make you pay a heavy price for your improper words. Shun Zipping's eyes were cruel. He licked his lips and took a step forward, sweeping towards Zhuowen like the wind. His right fist was like the wind, violently punching out. Blazing light surged out and covered the surface of Shun Zipping's fist. The power was extremely terrifying. This was Shun Zipping's strongest attack. When the surrounding cultivators saw Shun Zipping's fist, their expressions changed drastically. They knew that Shun Zipping was serious. Qiu Linglong's face was full of anxiety. After all, the calligraphy was given to her by Zhuowen. Moreover, Wuxia could bring this kid back to the cave residence. It was obvious that Wuxia valued this kid. If this kid was crippled because of her, she was afraid that she would have to bear the consequences in front of Wuxia. However, Shun Zipping's attack was too fast. Qiu Linglong knew that she couldn't block this attack, so she could only watch as Shun Zipping's attack landed on Zhuowen's body. It seems that you're scared silly. Then don't blame me for not showing mercy. When Shun Zipping saw that Zhuowen was actually standing motionless in the same place, the complacency in his eyes became even more intense. He laughed wildly and ruthlessly punched Zhuowen in the chest. Even if a Master of Destiny cultivator of the same level directly received this punch, there was a high chance that he would die. Bang! But soon, Shun Zipping's expression changed. This was because he realized that his fist felt as if it had hit a solid rock. A sharp pain came from the surface of his fist. As for the young man who should have been sent flying by his punch, he stood there as steady as a boulder, unmoving like a mountain. How is this possible? At this moment, Shun Zipping's expression was as if he had seen a ghost. It was filled with disbelief. His voice also became much sharper because of the shock. The strength of this punch is not bad. Unfortunately, it's too weak. Zhuowen shook his head, raised his right palm, and suddenly whistled towards Shun Zipping's cheek. Shun Zipping wanted to dodge, but his fists were in a heart-wrenching pain. Moreover, his fists seemed to be sucked in by Zhuowen's chest, making it difficult for him to withdraw his hands. He could only watch as Zhuowen's right palm got closer and closer to his cheek. "Pa!" The crisp sound of a slap rang out. Everyone couldn't help but cover their cheeks. It felt as if a slap had landed on their faces. It was simply too loud. As for Shun Zipping, he was slapped to the ground, and his entire head was shoved into the ground. Shun Zipping's whole body struggled, trying to pull his head out. Unfortunately, Zhuowen stepped on Shun Zipping's neck, firmly suppressing him under his feet. No matter how Shun Zipping struggled, he couldn't pull his head out. Immediately after, everyone felt dizzy. Zhuowen's right foot was firmly pressed against Shun Zipping's neck, and his left foot had already been raised. Everyone felt a chill run down their spines, as if they had thought of Zhuowen's next move. Their bodies couldn't help but tremble. A sudden scream rang out. Everyone pitifully looked at Zhuowen's left foot, which was now free, rudely aimed at Shun Zipping's body, as if he was using Shun Zipping's body as a human punching bag. How ruthless! In the crowd, some people secretly muttered. They felt that Zhuowen's actions were so decisive and ruthless, without the slightest bit of mercy. On the other hand, Qiu Linglong's beautiful eyes widened as she stared blankly at Zhuowen, who was continuously kicking Shun Zipping like a human sandbag. She didn't expect her master's new junior to be so fierce. Although Shun Zipping could only be considered average among the many disciples of the Ten Extremes Een Corpse sect, he was still the destined master. Chapter 2852. Shun Hongxian, you're too arrogant. Let go of senior brother Shun. At this moment, Shun Zipping's lackeys, who were originally following behind him, came back to their senses and attacked Zhuowen. They wanted to stop Zhuowen from continuing to beat up Shun Zipping. None of these lackeys were weak. They were all Lord Hunyuan. They would be considered geniuses if they were in a normal Dao palace. However, in a large sect like the 10 Ultimate Een Corpse sect, they could only be considered average disciples. Zhuowen's feet didn't stop moving. He punched out with both fists, knocking down the dozen or so lackeys with each punch. Zhuowen did not show any mercy. He beat the lackeys half to death. They were all lying on the ground, unable to get up. Bang! Zhuowen's final kick landed on Shun Zipping's abdomen. The latter screamed in pain and flew straight up. Shun Zipping's head finally saw the light of day. However, it did not look good. His face was covered in dirt, and his right cheek was swollen beyond recognition. Bang! Shun Zipping fell to the ground. His body seemed to have fallen apart, and he could not move at all. If it were not for his rising and falling chest, everyone would have thought that he was dead. Qiu Linglong quickly ran to Zhuowen's side. Looking at Shun Zipping's miserable state, she carefully asked Zhuowen, "Junior brother, oh no, senior brother, will Shun Zipping be okay?" Zhuowen waved his hand and said, "Senior sister, you should call me junior brother Shaowen. After all, I just entered the 10 Ultimate Een Corpse sect. According to seniority, I am below you. As for Shun Zipping, senior sister, don't worry. I'm just giving him a taste of his own medicine. He threatened to break all my bones, so I'm returning it to him." As he spoke, Zhuowen walked to Shun Zipping's side and unceremoniously took the letter from his hand. "Who are you? How dare you beat me up like this? You'll regret it." Shun Zipping stuttered and was out of breath. "Shun Zipping, you and I have no enmity between us. If you didn't steal our letters, I wouldn't have made a move. Furthermore, before I made my move, I had already warned you to return my letter. If so, I wouldn't bother about it. But you were too conceited and didn't listen at all. Instead, you wanted to cripple me. I can tolerate you for a while, but I won't tolerate you forever. You asked for it." After Zhuowen finished speaking, he brought Qiu Linglong to the entrance of the courtyard. After showing the letter to the cultivator guarding the entrance, they smoothly entered the courtyard. Shun Zipping wanted to cry, but had no tears. If he had known that Zhuan was so strong, he would not have taken the initiative to provoke him, unless his head was squeezed by a door. In the crowd, a cultivator carefully walked to Shun Zipping's side and helped him up. He said in a deep voice, "Senior brother Shun, all your bones and tendons are broken. Your injuries are very serious. You must go back and heal as soon as possible." Shun Zipping's gaze was vicious as he said, "Junior brother, wait a moment. Use my communication jade talisman to inform my brother, Shun Hongxian. This kid injured me so badly. This enmity cannot be forgotten. My brother will definitely seek justice for me." Hearing this, the cultivator's expression changed slightly. He had heard of Shun Hongxuan's name before. He could be considered a famous genius in the Ten Extremes Corpse sect. Moreover, Shun Hongxian was the disciple of the 8th Elder, Mao Xinho. With the 8th Elder as his backer, his status in the sect was much higher than ordinary disciples. "What are you waiting for? Hurry up and inform my brother." Shun Zipping saw that the cultivator was hesitating and immediately scolded. The cultivator hurriedly responded and took out Shun Zipping's communication jade talisman to send a message to Shun Hongxian. In the message, there was naturally a detailed description of what had happened here. Naturally, there was no lack of Shun Zipping's embellishment, describing Zhuan as an unpardonable evil. In the courtyard, the environment was elegant. There were pavilions, rockeries, jade stones, bird song, and the fragrance of flowers. Moreover, there was a huge blue moon floating in the sky above the courtyard. It emitted a faint blue light that illuminated the entire courtyard, making it look mysterious and elegant. In the middle of the courtyard, there was a huge lake. The center of the lake reflected the blue moon. It was as if the moon was reflected in the water. Above the lake, there were 5 floating pavilions. Each of them was extremely luxurious, like a castle. These 5 floating pavilions represented the positions of the 5 great geniuses. Many cultivators had gathered on the ring-shaped shore of the lake. These cultivators were all seated on the ground, taking out wine from their respective spirit rings and drinking by themselves. Their gazes were blazing as they looked at the 5 floating pavilions in the middle of the lake. These cultivators were the young geniuses of the 10 Extremes Corpse sect. They were either very talented or had a strong background. On the shore, a black-clothed youth with a cold expression looked at the communication jade talisman at his waist. His face instantly darkened. "Brother Shun, what's wrong with you? You look so gloomy. Is there something that makes you unhappy?" A blue-robed man sitting beside the black-clothed youth noticed that the black-clothed youth's expression was not right and asked in surprise. "My good-for-nothing younger brother was beaten up at the entrance of the courtyard. All his bones and tendons are broken." The black-clothed youth was Shun Hongxian. He had just received Shen Ziwen's message and was furious. Who is so bold to beat up your younger brother? Don't they know that you are his elder brother?" The blue-robed man asked in surprise. "I heard that it was a man brought by Qiu Linglong. This pair of bitches actually dared to bully my younger brother. Don't blame me for being rude," Shen Hongxian said coldly. "Qiu Linglong is here too? I remember that this Qiu Linglong is merely an outer disciple of Elder Yin. She's very insignificant. Moreover, she's only Lord Hunyuan. Logically speaking, this woman doesn't have the qualifications to enter this demonic genius gathering, right?" The blue-robed man asked curiously. "I heard that this woman obtained Elder Yin's letter. Zipping might have gotten into a conflict with her because of the letter," Shen Hongxian said somewhat helplessly. The blue-robed man nodded slightly. He had some understanding of Shun Zipping's character. If Qiu Linglong had really obtained Yin Wuxi's letter, Shun Zipping would definitely snatch it. Logically speaking, with Shun Zipping's strength, it was more than enough to snatch the letter from Qiu Linglong. Unfortunately, he had encountered Zhuan. With Qiu Linglong's strength, it is unlikely that she is Shun Zipping's opponent. Could it be that the man brought by Qiu Linglong beat up Shun Zipping? To be able to beat up Shun Zipping, he has to be at least Lord Tianming's strength. Such an expert is definitely not a nobody in the sect. Who is it? The blue-robed man asked curiously. Shen Hongxian shook his head and said, Zipping's message said that Xiao Linglong called that man junior brother Xiao Wan. This is the first time I've heard this name. Chapter 2853. Blue Moon Lake. These two should be entering the courtyard. We only need to pay attention to the entrance and find Xiao Linglong. Then, we'll be able to see the man that Xiao Linglong brought with her. At that time, we'll be able to see his true face. The blue-robed man shook his head and stopped making wild guesses. He only diverted a bit of his attention to the entrance. He wanted to see who exactly the man that Xiao Linglong brought with her was. Shen Hongxuan's expression was gloomy as he did the same. Under Xiao Linglong's lead, Zhuowen walked through an elegant corridor and finally arrived in front of the huge lake in the center of the courtyard. It had to be said that the design of the courtyard was quite eye-catching. Along the way, it was overflowing with greenery. The wooden corridor was carved with exquisite patterns. While walking through the corridor, Zhuowen had the illusion that he had stepped into a fairyland. When he arrived in front of the lake and saw the huge blue moon hanging high above the lake, the amazement in his eyes could no longer be concealed. This courtyard is the garden of Senior Ghost Plume. It took him thousands of years to build it. The rockery and building materials inside are considered rare materials in the host region. They are priceless. Xiao Linglong was very excited. She looked left and right along the way and chattered like a cheerful sparrow. Her beautiful eyes could not hide her admiration for Ghost Plume. Zhuowen nodded inwardly. This Ghost Plume was indeed thoughtful. He had actually built this small garden to such a scale. He had really put in a lot of effort. When Zhuowen walked out of the corridor, he immediately felt two unfriendly gazes directed at him. Although these two gazes were very obscure, he could still feel them. He turned his head to look at the northeast corner of the lake. There were two cultivators sitting cross-legged there. These two cultivators were a black-robed youth and a blue-robed man. The black-robed youth's face was especially sharp and angular. He actually somewhat resembled Shen Zipping. Zhuowen's eyes flickered. He thought of something and naturally looked away. These two definitely had bad intentions towards him. However, he did not remind Xiao Linglong because he felt that these two were targeting him. If the two of them really attacked him, Zhuowen wouldn't mind teaching them a lesson. This is the Blue Moon Lake. Senior Ghost Plume personally plucked the blue moon from a secret realm. It hangs high above his courtyard. It is said that the blue moon contains a mysterious energy. Bathing in the blue moon's radiance can aid in cultivation and improve one's state of mind. Xiao Linglong didn't notice that there were two unkind gazes fixed on her. Her beautiful eyes were fanatically looking at the blue moon above the lake. Senior Xiao, let's find a seat first. Zhuowen smiled faintly. He brought Xiao Linglong to an empty spot at an extremely remote corner of the lakeside. He took out two prayer mats and a table. He also took out a few jugs of good wine and poured himself a drink. Xiao Linglong was like a little girl, looking left and right. This made Zhuowen speechless as he shook his head. Brother Shun, don't be rash now. Senior Ghost Plume is currently discussing Dao with the other four monsters. If you make a move now, Senior Ghost Plume won't let you off. The blue-robed man hurriedly reminded him when he felt Shen Hongxuan's violent aura. Shen Hongxian took a deep breath and retracted his gaze. He closed his eyes and said in a low voice, Brother Lung, don't worry. I am not a rash person. The blue-robed man nodded and revealed a cruel smile. After Senior Ghost Plume's Dao discussion ends, Senior Ghost Plume will arrange a martial arts competition. It is said that the champion of the martial arts competition will receive guidance from Senior Ghost Plume and the other four monsters. I think, Brother Shun, that martial arts competition will be your chance to take revenge. I remember that Senior Ghost Plume only said that no one should die during the competition. He did not mention any other requirements, such as crippling that cultivator. That is also allowed. Shen Hongxian suddenly opened his eyes, revealing a flash of light. He cupped his fists at the blue-robed man and said, Thank you for your reminder, Brother Lung. During the martial arts competition, I will make that cultivator suffer. After drinking a few cups of wine, Zhuan's gaze landed on the 5 floating pavilions in the middle of the lake. In each pavilion sat a cultivator with a powerful aura. There were many maids serving the owners of the pavilions humbly. With Qiu Linglong's introduction, Zhuan had a rough understanding of the 5 monsters in the pavilions. It was said that the 5 monsters were the strongest of the younger generation in the host region. They were the idols of all the young cultivators in the host region. Among them, Yi Qidong of the Scarlet Mountain Villa was publicly recognized as the strongest. His cultivation was the highest at the early stage of the Lord of Creation, and his battle prowess was extremely terrifying. It was said that he had once fought with an early-stage Lord of Creation without losing. The other 4 monsters were Ghost Plume of the 10 Extremes En Corpse Sect, Xing Jing of the Falling Star Mountain, Su Chun Shun of the Void Palace, and Jiang Qixing of the Sun-Chasing Temple. Their cultivation levels were slightly lower than Yi Qidong's. They were only half-step Lords of Creation, and their strength was similar. They should have the battle prowess of a peak Lord of Creation. Yi Qidong was dressed in red, and his long hair was draped over his shoulders. He was so handsome that he did not look like a man. At this moment, Yi Qidong was lazily propping up his head with one hand as he watched Ghost Plume and the other 3 discuss Dao in boredom. He was very conceited and was far stronger than Ghost Plume and the other 3. He did not care to discuss Dao with the other 4. If not for the fact that Ghost Plume had told him about the place where ancestral shaman Gong had died, he would not have even bothered to participate in this so-called monster gathering. In the distant past, before the primitive heavenly region had split, the 3 pure ones and the 12 ancestral shamans were the peak existences in this universe. It was said that both the 3 pure ones and the 12 ancestral shamans had the strength of a peak Lord of Creation. They were true peak experts. In the current astral age, not to mention peak Astromaster powerhouses, even Astromaster powerhouses were as rare as phoenix feathers and unicorn horns. The leaders of the 5 Dao palaces of the host region had not appeared for a long time. They were only suspected to be Lord of Creation experts, and it was not confirmed. Yi Qidong was the strongest genius of the Scarlet Mountain Villa and the leader of the 5 monsters of the host region. He knew more secrets than the average person. Yi Qidong knew that the Scarlet Mountain Villa's sect master was indeed an early Lord of Creation expert. As for whether the leaders of the other 4 Dao palaces were Lord of Creation experts, he was not sure. But since they could become leaders of Dao palaces, the difference in strength would not be too great. Even if they were not Lord of Creation experts, they were at least half-step Lord of Creation experts. As for peak Lord of Creation experts, Yi Qidong knew that they might exist in the entire Xianmi heavenly region, but they were extremely rare. At least at his level, he would not be able to come into contact with them. But in the era of the 3 pure ones and the 12 ancestral shamans, there were many early Lord of Creation experts, and the 3 pure ones and the 12 ancestral shamans were all peak Lord of Creation experts. Gong was one of the 12 ancestral shamans, and Yi Qidong was indeed attracted to it. He knew that if he could take a look at Gong's corpse, it would be of great benefit to his future cultivation. Chapter 2854. Yi Qidong on the shore of a lake. Zhuan sat cross-legged with a cup of wine in his hand. He silently listened to the discussion of Dao between the 5 freaks. To be more precise, it was the discussion of Dao between the 4 freaks. Yi Qidong was too arrogant, and he only leaned lazily against the pavilion. He didn't participate in the discussion of Dao between Ghost Plume and the others. Zhuan listened quietly, and a look of understanding appeared in his eyes. Ghost Plume and the others indeed had a comprehension of the heavenly Tao that ordinary people couldn't reach. Although Zhuan didn't agree with some parts of the discussion, he agreed with the remaining parts, and they also gave him quite a bit of inspiration. Apart from Ghost Plume and the others' comprehension of the heavenly Tao, what shocked Zhuan even more was the aura that Ghost Plume and the others faintly exuded. If Zhuan wasn't wrong, Ghost Plume, Xing Jing, Shu Shun, and Jiang Qixing were all half-step creators, but their strength far surpassed that. The threat that these forgave him was even stronger than Yin Wuxia's. In other words, their strength was most likely above Yin Wuxia's. The one that Zhuan was most likely the most wary of was Yi Qidong, who was leaning lazily against the pavilion. This Yi Qidong was definitely a prodigy. Although his cultivation was only at the early stage of the God of Creation stage, he was more powerful than Ghost Plume and the others. It was rumored that this Yi Qidong could battle with early-stage creators. This was most likely not a baseless rumor. It was very likely that it was true. Brother Yi, what do you think of the Tao that we discussed? Ghost Plume was wearing a gray robe, and his face was abnormally pale. He smiled as he looked at Yi Qidong. When Ghost Plume said this, Shu Shun, Jiang Qixing, and Xing Jing all looked at Yi Qidong. The three of them were also very curious as to how Yi Qidong would evaluate the Tao that they had just discussed. Yi Qidong yawned and said in a bored tone, So, you don't have to worry about me. Just continue your discussion and treat me as heir. Ghost Plume and the other three's expressions immediately turned ugly. Xing Jing was the only female among the five. She was beautiful and had an otherworldly temperament. She was a bit angry when she saw Yi Qidong's uncaring attitude. Brother Yi, are you looking down on us? Since you've been invited to this freak meet, you ought to have the obligation to share your comprehensions and experiences, Xing Jing said in a delicate voice. Yi Qidong slowly turned his head, a pair of long and narrow phoenix eyes staring at Xing Jing. He grinned and said, Is junior sister Xing Jing dissatisfied with me? Xing Jing's entire body went cold. Although Yi Qidong was smiling, her entire body was cold, extremely uncomfortable. Yi Qidong stared at Xing Jing, his gaze growing colder and colder. A terrifying aura filled the entire Blue Moon Lake. The originally calm Blue Moon Lake suddenly surged with terrifying waves, like a dragon emerging from the sea. Zhuan's expression changed slightly. Yi Qidong's aura alone was so terrifying. It was like a giant mountain, suppressing the surroundings, causing many cultivators to feel a sense of suffocation. Zhuan's gaze became very serious. Yi Qidong's strength was somewhat beyond his expectations. He knew very well that Yi Qidong could emit such a terrifying aura. If they really fought, the aura he released would be even more terrifying, and his power would be even more shocking. His heart was pounding. If he were to face Yi Qidong, he would be far inferior, unless his Panga's sacred body could reach the 6-star level. Xing Jing's entire body trembled, and her teeth began to chatter because Yi Qidong's aura was completely crushing her body. Ghost Plume saw that the atmosphere was not quite right, and hurriedly said to Yi Qidong, Brother Yi, don't take it to heart. Junior sister Xing Jing has always had a straightforward personality. Just now, she accidentally said something wrong. I hope Brother Yi doesn't take it to heart. Shu Shun and Jiang Qixing also spoke up for Xing Jing. Yi Qidong slowly withdrew the terrifying aura on his body and said indifferently, Today, I came to participate in this gathering because of Brother Guiling. If it wasn't for that matter, Yi Qidong wouldn't have specially come to participate in your so-called Tao discussion. Yi Qidong was very domineering. His words showed that he did not take Ghost Plume and the others seriously. Ghost Plume and the others' expressions were not very good, but there was nothing they could do. They had seen how terrifying Yi Qidong was before. 100 years ago, Yi Qidong's cultivation level was the same as theirs, and he was also a half-step Genesis creator. He had challenged them one by one and defeated all 4 of them. Now that Yi Qidong had become a Genesis creator before them, his strength would only be more terrifying, and he would leave the 4 of them far behind. Although the outside world still called the 5 of them the 5 great freaks. But Guiling knew that even with the 4 of them added together, they were completely unable to compare to Yi Qidong alone. And after Yi Qidong became a Genesis creator, he no longer took the 4 of them seriously. As the terrifying aura retracted, Xing Jing's expression relaxed, and his gaze toward Yi Qi Dong was filled with fear and unease. Today's Tao discussion will end here. I think we've already said what we needed to say. Next, it should be the martial arts competition that I've prepared for the four of you. This time, because we heard that the four of you had come to my humble abode as guests, we were all extremely excited and gathered around to see the four of you. For this reason, I've specially arranged a martial arts competition as a form of entertainment for the four of you. At the same time, I've also taken the initiative to ask if any of my junior brothers won first place this time. I hope that the four of you can give some pointers. Ghost Plume smiled warmly, giving off the feeling of a spring breeze. Xing Jing, Su Chan Shun, and Jiang Qixing all clasped their hands in greeting. Yi Qi Dong, on the other hand, still did as he pleased and only nodded lightly at Ghost Plume without any other expression. Ghost Plume did not care about Yi Qi Dong's attitude. He knew that a freak like Yi Qi Dong had already given him a lot of face by coming here. He naturally did not expect Yi Qi Dong to express his attitude. Ghost Plume stood up, and his gaze fell on the shores of the Blue Moon Lake as he began to narrate the details of the martial arts competition. Many of the disciples on the shores of the Blue Moon Lake already knew what was going to happen. Now that they heard Ghost Plume's introduction again, they were still overwhelmed with emotions. The martial arts competition this time was a once-in-a-lifetime opportunity for them. The five great freaks were the five strongest individuals of the younger generation, and their understanding of the heavenly Tao was even deeper and more shallow than most Genesis creators. If they could receive guidance from these five monstrous geniuses, most of the disciples present would benefit greatly. Zhuowen sat in his seat, bored to death. He was not interested in the martial arts competition that Ghost Plume had proposed. With his strength, it would be too easy for him to defeat all the other disciples apart from the five great freaks. Chapter 2855. Martial arts competition, however. Zhuowen was not interested in the benefits of winning first place in the martial arts competition. His comprehension of the heavenly laws was already far superior to ordinary people. Moreover, he cultivated the unprecedented Pangu, sacred body. His future was limitless, and his potential was even greater than Yi Qi Dong's. Zhuowen had his own pride. With his potential and strength, he did not need Ghost Plume's guidance at all. Of course, with Yi Qi Dong's extraordinary talent, in Zhuowen's eyes, he was still qualified to discuss the Tao with him as an equal. However, it was merely a discussion of the Tao as an equal. Gue Ling and the others were not qualified in Zhuowen's eyes. Although Zhuowen was not interested, Qiu Linglong beside him was extremely excited. Her beautiful eyes were filled with passion. Junior brother Xiaowen, this is a once-in-a-lifetime opportunity. The five great geniuses rarely gather together. Moreover, to be able to receive guidance from the five great geniuses will definitely benefit you for the rest of your life, Qiu Linglong said fervently. Zhuowen was speechless. He shook his head and said, "Senior Sister Qiu, I think that the people gathered at the Blue Moon Lake are all famous geniuses in the sect. I think it will be very difficult to stand out from them and become first place in the martial arts competition." Qiu Linglong calmed down and sighed softly. Junior brother Xiaowen, you are right. With my strength, it is indeed very unlikely for me to become first place. However, speaking of this, Qiu Linglong's beautiful eyes burned with passion. She knew that Zhuowen was very strong. After all, even a heavenly fate master like Shun Zipping was easily defeated by the youth in front of her. Zhuowen shook his head and said, "Senior Sister Qiu, I do not plan to participate in this martial arts competition. My Tao depends on my own comprehension. I do not need anyone to guide me." Qiu Linglong was slightly stunned. Although she felt that it was a pity, she did not say anything. The martial arts competition was based on one's will. Although she wanted to participate, she was not strong enough. She would be cannon fodder if she went. Although Zhuowen was strong, he was not willing to be guided by the five great geniuses. Qiu Linglong felt that it was a pity, but there was nothing she could do. At this moment, Ghost Plume began to introduce the rules of the martial arts competition and the martial arts competition's day. The martial arts competition adopted a challenge system, and the venue was the Blue Moon Lake. Moreover, the challenge system was mutual. In other words, not only could the cultivator on the stage accept the challenge of the cultivator below the stage, the cultivator on the stage could even choose the cultivator below the stage as his opponent. Who's going first? Gui Ling stood up and looked at the many disciples around the Blue Moon Lake as he said calmly. As soon as Ghost Plume finished speaking, two figures appeared from the shore of the Blue Moon Lake and landed in the center of the lake. They looked at each other from afar, their battle intent soaring to the sky. I am Tian Yong Yuan, a disciple of the seventh elder, Gong Zipeng. A round-faced cultivator cupped his fists and said with a serious expression, I am Xiaobin, a disciple of the sixth elder, Fan Jiaoyang. Opposite the round-faced cultivator was the square-faced cultivator. His gaze was cold, and he also cupped his hands toward the round-faced cultivator. After the two saluted each other, they let out a low roar and pounced on each other. Every move was fierce and terrifying. Both of them were peak heavens will lord cultivators. Because they were evenly matched in strength, the scene of their battle was rather grand and intense. It was very interesting to watch. After about 100 moves, the round-faced cultivator made a mistake and the square-faced cultivator took advantage of it. A blow landed on the round-faced cultivator's body and sent him flying. Of course, the square-faced cultivator didn't have it easy either. His cultivation was about the same as the round-faced cultivator's, so he had to use all his strength to defeat the round-faced cultivator. At this moment, he also suffered from serious internal injuries. After the square-faced cultivator defeated the round-faced cultivator, he had the right to challenge his opponent once. Due to his serious injuries, the square-faced cultivator gave up the right to choose his opponent and the right to continue accepting challenges. He took the initiative to leave the stage. One had to admit that the square-faced cultivator was very smart. With his internal injuries, if he wanted to continue fighting, he was afraid that his injuries would worsen. Therefore, the square-faced cultivator made a wise choice. Next, two more cultivators rushed over from shore. After announcing their names, they began to use their best moves to fight. Yi Qidong leaned lazily and looked at the two figures fighting in the center of the Blue Moon Lake with interest. Zhuowen was bored to death. He felt that this martial arts competition was very boring. Just as he was thinking about how to leave the courtyard, he saw an extremely familiar figure at the northwest corner of the Blue Moon Lake. Zhuowen narrowed his eyes and looked coldly at the figure. His expression was very unfriendly. This person was young and had a handsome face. There was a golden vertical mark between his eyebrows, and he had a unique temperament. This Sakyamuni is really not dead. He actually joined the 10 Ultimate In Corpse sect. Zhuowen's gaze was calm. Although he had heard about the matter regarding Sakura from In Wuxia previously, he had already heard about it. But now that he saw Sakyamuni with his own eyes, it still gave him a great shock and surprise. Sakyamuni seemed to sense Zhuowen's strange gaze. He frowned and couldn't help but look at Zhuowen with a puzzled expression. Sakyamuni was unfamiliar with the young man who looked at him with a strange gaze. However, for some reason, he felt an unprecedented sense of familiarity from this unfamiliar young man, as if he had known this person for a long time. At this moment, Zhuowen had already changed his appearance and was not his original appearance. Sakyamuni was unable to recognize Zhuowen for a moment. Sakyamuni looked coldly at Zhuowen and did not pay too much attention to him. Instead, he focused all his attention on the martial arts competition in the center of the Blue Moon Lake. The guidance of the 5 monstrous geniuses was a great temptation for Sakyamuni. He also wanted to become the champion of this martial arts competition. Moreover, he was very confident in himself. He had just come out of seclusion not long ago, and his cultivation had smoothly advanced to the early stage Eternal Lord realm. His battle strength was even more terrifying. Ordinary half-step Genesis lords were no match for him. Apart from the 5 monstrous geniuses present, there was basically no one who could be Sakymuni's opponent. His strength was extremely terrifying. Sakyamuni did not intend to go on stage so early. He knew very well that the earlier he went on stage, the more battles he would have to experience and the greater the consumption of his energy. It would be a big obstacle to his final victory. I am Shun Hongxian, a disciple of the 8th elder Mao Xinho's lineage. Suddenly, a black-robed young man flew out from the shore and landed in the center of the Blue Moon Lake. Zhuowen's eyes narrowed the moment he saw this black-robed young man. This black-robed young man was no stranger to Zhuowen. It was this black-robed young man who had cast an unfriendly look at him as soon as he entered the courtyard. Chapter 2856. Shen Hongshuan's Provocation. It's actually Shen Hongxian. Qiu Linglong stood beside Zhuowen, her willowy brows slightly furrowed. She didn't look too good. Senior Sister Qiu, is there some kind of relationship between Shen Hongxian and Shen Zipping? Zhuowen asked Qiu Linglong. Shen Hongxian is Shen Zipping's elder brother. He's very strong and a disciple of the 8th elder's lineage. It's said that he broke through to the Lord of Profound Secrets not long ago and is much stronger than Shen Zipping. At this point, Qiu Linglong looked at Zhuowen worriedly and continued. I think that after Shen Zipping was taken care of by you, he will probably complain to Shen Hongxian. Shen Hongxian should know about the matter between you and Shen Zipping. Zhuowen nodded. His expression didn't change, but he was laughing coldly in his heart. It'd be best if Shen Hongxian knew what was good for him. If he didn't, Zhuowen didn't mind taking action. Shen Hongshuan's strength was indeed impressive. His opponent was also the Lord of Profound Secrets, but Shen Hongxian had easily dealt with him. Only then did the crowd realize that Shen Hongxian was already a peak expert of the Lord of Profound Secrets. His strength was close to that of an eternal overlord and was unfathomable. After defeating his opponent, Shen Hongxian chose to challenge his opponent. He looked around the shore of Blue Moon Lake and finally stopped on Zhuowen. A cold smile tugged at his lips. You get the hell up here. Shen Hongxian pointed at Zhuowen, his words impudent and his eyes full of arrogance. Junior brother, Shen Hongxian really did come looking for you. You'd better forfeit. Otherwise, Shen Hongxian won't show you any mercy, Qiu Linglong hurriedly advised. Zhuowen smiled and gestured for Qiu Linglong not to worry. He took a step forward and landed in the center of Blue Moon Lake, facing Shen Hongxian. Many cultivators on the shore were surprised because they found that the cultivator Shen Hongxian challenged was only the Master of Destiny. Ghost Plume frowned, looking displeased. In his opinion, the winner of the challenge should at least be someone of the same cultivation level as him or higher. However, Shen Hongxian had chosen a Master of Destiny, whose cultivation was 1 level lower than Shen Hongshuan's. However, Ghost Plume didn't explicitly mention this, so he couldn't say anything. But after Shen Hongshuan's challenge ended, Ghost Plume planned to send a voice transmission to remind Shen Hongxian. When Shen Hongxian saw that Zhuowen had really come up to him, he revealed a cruel smile and asked, Do you know who I am? Whether you're a human, a beast, or something else, what does that have to do with me? Zhuowen retorted. Shen Hongshuan's eyes flashed with anger as he looked at Zhuowen with an unfriendly expression. It seems that you still don't know my identity? Then you should remember Shen Zipping, right? You mean Shen Zipping? I just crippled a mad dog whose name is Shen Zipping. Is that mad dog your brother? Zhuowen spoke mercilessly. He knew that this Shen Hongxian was clearly looking for trouble with him. Naturally, he would not give him any face. You're courting death. I'll tell you right now, I'm Shen Zipping's elder brother. You crippled all the bones in my brother's body. You're vicious and merciless. Today, I'll let you have a taste of the pain of having all your bones broken. Shen Hongxian was unable to restrain his anger. The aura of a peak master of profound secrets suddenly erupted, and he was like a terrifying storm that swept over. Shun Hongshuan's right hand formed a palm and blasted out through the air. Terrifying energy whistled out, and a huge black seagull appeared behind Shun Hongxian. This black seagull's shadow was extremely large. When it spread its wings, it seemed to cover the sky and the sun. Its aura was extremely powerful. The black seagull's wings suddenly flapped, and a violent hurricane swept out, wreaking havoc in all directions. The calm surface of the Blue Moon Lake was swept up in terrifying waves. Layer upon layer, they constantly surged upwards. It was as if dragons had been born, sweeping out from the depths of the lake. The terrifying waves swept out, and many cultivators on the shore of the Blue Moon Lake were deeply affected. They involuntarily retreated, distancing themselves from the shore. As for the 5 huge pavilions floating above the Blue Moon Lake, they were as immovable as mountains. The terrifying waves swept over, but they were all blocked by the mysterious energy on the surface of the pavilions. The 5 monstrous geniuses sitting upright in the 5 pavilions watched calmly as Shun Hongxian created a terrifying commotion in the Blue Moon Lake. Although the commotion created by Shun Hongxian was indeed terrifying to the 5 of them, it was nothing more than a drizzle. It was not worth mentioning. Boom! The black seagull stretched its neck and let out a long cry. Its cry was sharp, piercing through gold and splitting stone. It rushed straight into the clouds and then swooped down, its target being Zhuowen. Zhuowen stood silently in place, his gaze as calm as water. Seeing the huge black seagull coming closer and closer, Zhuowen clenched his right hand and slowly punched out. Zhuowen's punch was ordinary, and there was no energy fluctuation at all. It was like a normal punch from an ordinary person. However, when this punch landed on the black seagull, the huge body of the black seagull froze in place. Then, Zhuowen suddenly increased his strength, and the black seagull let out a blood-curdling cry, dispersing into countless black fog. The terrifying fist intent soared into the sky, like a hot knife through butter, and swept directly towards Shun Hongxian. Shun Hongxian was still in shock from the collapse of the black seagull. When he saw the fist intent rushing towards him, he let out a loud cry and used all his strength to block it. Unfortunately, the moment the fist intent came into contact with Shun Hongxian, its power increased by hundreds or thousands of times. Shun Hongshuan's pupils shrunk to the size of needles. With a miserable shriek, he was directly sent flying by the fist intent. Waves of bloody mist continuously erupted from his body, making him look incomparably miserable. Bang! Shun Hongxian crashed into the ground, creating a rather deep crater. He was in the middle of the crater, twitching unnaturally. His body was covered in blood, and he looked like he had been subjected to some kind of inhumane torture. Ghost Plume's eyes narrowed slightly, and he looked curiously at Zhuowen, who had easily defeated Shun Hongxian. Zhuowen was a new face to him, or rather, he had never seen this person in the 10 Extremes Incorp sect. This made him very interested in Zhuowen. Shuchen Shun, Xing Jing, and Jiang Qixing were also moved. Their originally indifferent minds involuntarily fell on Zhuowen. Although there were examples of Master Tianming being able to defeat Master Xuanji, it was still very rare. Zhuowen didn't seem to be famous, but he had such powerful strength. It was impossible not to attract attention. Only Ichidong looked indifferently at Zhuowen and lost interest. He supported his head with his right hand and narrowed his eyes, as if he was daydreaming. The moment Shun Hongxian was severely injured, a blue-robed man flew out from the shore of the Blue Moon Lake and landed beside Ichidong. After a brief examination, his face immediately darkened. "Junior Martial Brother, aren't you being a little too ruthless? Brother Shin was just sparring with you, but you actually crippled all his bones and tendons." The blue-robed man's voice was very cold as he looked at Zhuowen with hostility. Zhuowen glanced indifferently at the blue-robed man and said, "This senior brother, Shun, threatened to shatter all my bones and tendons to avenge his younger brother. In order to prevent this senior brother Shun from taking revenge, I could only make the first move. Chapter 2857. A powerful newcomer. Injuries and deaths are unavoidable in a martial arts competition. Junior brother, you don't have to take it too seriously. Ghost Plume spoke calmly. The blue-robed man's eyes flickered, but he remained silent. The organizer of this martial arts competition was Ghost Plume, so the rules were naturally set by Ghost Plume. Since Ghost Plume had spoken, he had no right to make irresponsible remarks. If this senior brother is dissatisfied or unconvinced, I welcome you to challenge me and avenge your friend, Zhuowen suddenly said. The blue-robed man trembled as he looked at the smile on Zhuowen's face. A chill rose from the soles of his feet and rushed to the top of his head. Then forget it. This junior brother is strong. I admit that I'm not as good as you, so I won't embarrass myself. The blue-robed man hurriedly declined. His strength was at most on par with Shen Hongxian. If he went up to fight with this person, he would probably end up like Shen Hongxian. If that's the case, then get lost. What are you still doing here? Zhuowen said indifferently. The blue-robed man's ears turned red. He felt humiliated and hurriedly left the center of the Blue Moon Lake with Shen Hongxian. Zhuowen did not have any pity for Shen Hongxian and the blue-robed man. These two had been very unfriendly to him. If it weren't for the rules, the two of them would have killed him already. Against such an enemy, Zhuowen really had no need to show mercy. At this moment, many disciples on the shore of the Blue Moon Lake were discussing. They looked at Zhuowen's figure in the center of the lake with a trace of fear in their eyes. Shen Hongxuan's strength was not the best in this batch of disciples, but he was still above average. But Shen Hongxian could not even withstand a single move in the hands of this child and was defeated. Of course, Zhuowen's unfamiliar face was also the main reason why everyone was discussing. Generally, disciples who could enter this monster genius pageant were well-known geniuses in the sect. Strength and reputation were indispensable. Most of the disciples knew each other. However, when Zhuowen went up, none of the surrounding disciples recognized him. He was definitely a new face. Xiao Linglong was pleasantly surprised. Although she knew that Zhuowen was very strong, she did not expect him to be so strong. Shen Hongxian was actually defeated by Zhuowen in one move, which was out of her expectations. But soon, she was as excited as a newborn calf. She was truly happy for Zhuowen. Gue Ling, on the other hand, was carefully sizing up Zhuowen. He was a little surprised because he realized that the young man in front of him only had the aura of a destiny master. Moreover, he could not see any signs of concealing his cultivation. Ghost Plume began to make plans in his mind. He wanted to take this boy under his wing and nurture him well. In the future, he might become his right-hand man. Zhuowen stood at the center of the lake, feeling somewhat helpless. He had no interest in this martial arts competition. Originally, he had planned to leave the courtyard directly, but he did not expect Shen Hongxian to take the initiative to challenge him and come to the center of the lake. Zhuowen also knew the rules of this martial arts competition. The cultivator who won this martial arts competition had to stand on the arena and wait for others to challenge him. When no one dared to challenge him, he would be the winner of this martial arts competition. With Zhuowen's personality, he would either not do it or not do it half-heartedly. Although he did not care for the guidance of the 5 great monsters, he could give this opportunity to Qiu Linglong. This time, he came to this monster genius pageant and learned a lot about the 5 great monsters, mainly because of Qiu Linglong. In addition, for Zhuowen, winning first place in this martial arts competition was not difficult, so now he stood in the center of the lake and did not resist as much as he did at the beginning. "I'll take you on." After a moment of silence, a rough voice sounded. A burly man in short-sleeved hemp clothes jumped out and landed in the center of the lake opposite Zhuowen. This burly man carried a long saber on his back. His arms were inhumanly thick and strong, and his face was full of whiskers. "I'm Zohan, a disciple of the 6th elder, Fan Jiaoyang. Junior brother, you haven't told me your name before, right? Can you tell me your name and let me know which master in the sect has taught you a genius like you?" The burly man spoke in a rough voice. He seemed to be forthright, but his mind was very meticulous. You want to find out Zhuowen's background. Zhuowen did not panic and said indifferently, I'm Xiao Wan, a disciple that the ninth elder just accepted. I'm considered a newcomer. When Zhuowen said this, many of the disciples present were moved. Ghost Plume also revealed a look of surprise. The strength that Zhuowen displayed just now was really too strong. It was hard to imagine that someone with such strength was just a newcomer who had just been accepted. However, when they thought of Zhuowen's unfamiliar face, they felt relieved in their hearts. Zhuowen's explanation was indeed very reasonable. So it's junior brother Xiaowan. Junior brother Xiaowan, you're already so strong as a newcomer. Your future in the sect is limitless. Today I, Zohan, will experience your strength. When the burly man finished speaking, he pulled his right hand out from behind his back and took a step forward. Gusts of black wind erupted from his body, forming a terrifying black storm. Wielding a long saber, the burly man was very fast. In an instant, he swept in front of Zhuowen. The saber in his hand quickly slashed out. Terrifying saber light flashed in the air as if it could destroy everything in the world. Zhuowen's gaze was calm. This Zohan's strength was not bad. He was much stronger than Shen Hongxian. Although he was also at the peak of the profound mysteries realm, he was not far from becoming an eternal overlord. Zhuowen punched out with his bare hands. He did not use his full strength. He knew that killing Shen Hongxian in one move was too shocking. It was not beneficial for him to enter the underworld hell to find the elusive underworld soul flower, so he held back this time. Zhuowen and the burly man fought hundreds of rounds. Zhuowen succeeded in one move and defeated the burly man, Zohan, out of the competition. Zohan laughed heartily. He cupped his fists at Zhuowen and said, Junior brother Xiaowan, your strength is superb. I wholeheartedly accept my defeat. Zhuowen also cupped his fists at Zohan. He had a good impression of this person. At least he was open and above board. He dared to take responsibility for his actions and had a forthright personality. After that, Zhuowen accepted challenges from many disciples one after another. Among them, there was no lack of cultivators who were stronger than Zohan. However, Zhuowen basically did not refuse anyone. He won all of them. Moreover, because Zhuowen showed mercy in every battle, he won the favor of many of his opponents. Brother Ghost Plume, the newcomer of the 10 Extremes Yin Corpse sect, is a little too strong. He just joined your sect not long ago, but he's already so strong. Su Chen looked at Zhuowen's figure in the center of the lake and could not help but click his tongue in wonder. Ghost Plume chuckled and said, It's also because Elder Yin is lucky to have taken in such an amazing disciple. You're tuning in to the Warrior Lore YouTube channel. Don't forget to subscribe and join us on this journey to catch the most captivating stories.